right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. EUIC is coming up. Some huge VGC news with the new regulation announced, and we're going to be talking all about that this episode. My name's Sierra, one of your hosts. I'm joined here by my co-host, Joe Brown. And we also got special guests, plural, very important. We got Lou, and we got Gimli. Hello! How's it going?
It's good. It's good to catch up with both of you as well and, check in with all the exciting news that's happening. Gimli's very excited, our little kind of mascot Incineroar for this podcast, I think, tonight.
Yeah. A little less intimidating.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. It's always a pleasure seeing Gimli on the broadcast. Like when you had the Gimli cam in the Victory Road streams.
That was cute.
But I think this is a big breakthrough for the two of you here, because you've set your differences aside in the Gastrodon debate, and you're willing to be in the same room in the same conversation when one is east side, one is west side. So I think this is a big moment for you two.
I think we just agreed to disagree, right? Like, it's okay. We don't hold it against each other. It's all good.
It's like the yin and the yang, you have to have both, right? It's not going to be fun if it's like both pink Gastrodon, both blue Gastrodon, right?
Exactly. I have my blue Gastrodon thing with Lee, so I need like a Gastrodon rivalry with somebody else, and Sierra stepped up.
Exactly. See, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So I can't believe that you're trying to sow seeds of chaos to start things out here, Joe Brown. How dare you?
No, I think it's a group coming together. It's like, when the Gastrodon Mafia sits down together and, tries to create peace with each other. There's a lot. Listen, we've gotten questions, people talking about, is Gastrodon coming back next regulation? Like, people are excited.
Oh.
And so of course we can't.
I just want to see Moggy do
Gastrodon.
a Gastrodon, I just want to see Moggy do a Gastrodon Mafia picture now, like a meme. I don't know, what it would be, what the dealings are, as they're trying to fight the relevance aggressive. I don't know. There's
Al Capone
there's
hat,
something.
a cigar out of the mouth too.
I mean, with terrestrialization, I was always like, Gastrodon's viable no matter what. And there's a part of me that still dreams of Ghost Gastrodon being the ultimate Urshifu counter. Like, Urshifu Rapid Strike, what's it going to do to a Ghost Gastrodon? Literally nothing. It's a niche moment, but if that moment ever happened, it would just be, insane.
Too bad you're not competing at EUIC now, because that kind of sounds sick. I'm not gonna lie,
it's medical, right?
Right. So if anyone's still looking for an EUIC team, I mean, hey, there you go. But there's a lot to be discussing about. Want to dive into it. First up, talking about EUIC. Of course, we had to bring the EUIC queen on, Lou, to talk a little bit more about the upcoming event. Also, we get to cast together for the event, which is also super exciting. So I don't know. How are you feeling about EUIC?
Honestly, I'm so psyched for it. EUIC is my favorite event of the VGC calendar. Everyone's always like, yeah, it's Worlds, but for me, it's EUIC. That's kind of where I have my origin, I suppose. It was my first international, and this will now be my 5th EUIC. And I just, every single event I go to, I always feel like that's where I compare as a commentator, have I improved? Where was I this time last year? And kind of looking at that journey and whatnot. Plus, I'm a very diehard Team EU kind of rooter, if that makes sense. I'm always rooting for the EU guys to be able to go all the way, and I know that the trophy went over to NA last year with Paul Chewer, and the EU guys are definitely trying to bring it back.
Yeah, we kind of did steal that away. So hey, you guys got the LAIC title. Y'all stole that away from Brazil.
And we
there
had
too.
NAIC last year, to be fair, as well, with Alex Gomez. So we even score a bit.
Yeah,
but
just
we won them all. We want them all.
Oh my goodness!
It just shows the wide talent around the whole, country, and that anybody can show up from any region, and I'm sure we wouldn't be surprised if one of the best Latin American players ended up winning EUIC. This upcoming weekend. It's definitely possible. So I think we are in a good spot now. I don't know how the rivalries go between regions now compared to how they used to be. Lou, I know you were there back in the day when we used to have the Nats for every country instead of just the one IC representing. I think that made those regional rivalries even more contentious, right?
Yeah, I love all the friendly rivalries that go around, and even just touching on Latin America there, Gabriela Gatti was runner-up at EUIC last year as well, so there's so much contention from all of the areas, and they all have their own, I suppose, meta called as well, you know? Like, at one point there was, like, the French community all ran Shninja 2 years ago, and it was like, if you saw a Shninja, it had to be a French player. And then there was a lot of, you know, very balanced calls coming through from Spain. At the minute in Spain and EU, we've had a lot of, like, Komodo teams and things like that. So, Gimli doesn't like Komodo, apparently. He's not happy.
So I don't blame you, Gimli.
Yeah, he's like, Incineroar can't really do too much there. It's not my bag. But I like seeing, like, all the different regions kind of having, like, different meta calls. And I don't know, in, like, NA, like, obviously you don't have, like, different countries, but you have, like, different regions, I suppose. Is it similar over there with, like, different kind of meta calls in different areas?
It's like a little bit. I think it's more so with, like, player groups, which can then sometimes be a little bit more spread out. So, like, we'll all kind of be on something or along, like, a wavelength, or you'll see, like, different players that are working together and kind of, like, the ideas that come from there. I think, like, sometimes there's a little bit of expectation in terms of, like, the East Coast versus that West Coast.
Yeah.
I, like, for myself, I kind of very much so strongly associate West Coast with, like, more weather-oriented teams. I'm just thinking Vancouver last year won by sun. Portland won by sun last year. Looking at OCIC last year, we're able to see Rain take the event coming from Gavin Michaels, West Coast player. So it's just kind of like that's sort of the thought, but I think that's like the biggest standout to me. It's not quite of a big of a difference or so drastic with like French Ninja out there.
Yeah, but then
That's
East
fair,
Coast,
that's
like
fair.
New York, New Jersey, is just it's just a balance, you know, festival out here. Like when you play at Premier Challenges, it is like I think these are the most well-rounded 6 Pokemon, and you're gonna face in your 6 rounds at this PC. You're going to face these 6 Pokemon 5 times. And you're going to have to make the call, the 50-50s every single time on how to get around you know, I always call Raging Bolt Thunderclap. And it feels so like dismissive, like to just call it what it does. Like I don't call her Shifu Surging Strikes. I don't know why I always in my head, I say Thunderclap instead of Raging Bolt. But like Raging Bolt Fire Water Grass is just, it's just a new heat. Over here.
It really is. And you see that in the stats like big time as well. Like particularly in EU, like EU sometimes has some really crazy teams. But if we look back at Utrecht, the top 6 Pokemon in day 2 were like incredibly balanced. It had that Fire Water Grass core like you mentioned, but then across all 6 Pokemon there were 10 different types, and it was a complete 50-50 split of, you know, physical and special attackers. So at the minute, things are becoming a little bit more harmonious, but I mean, I say all that, but then Articuno and Alolan Ninetales did win that special event. So,
yeah.
I mean,
kind of
that's
wild.
a team that kind of like does well into balance. So it's like, with all the balance that's gone around and the fact that we do finally have a format that's lasting a bit longer than 3 months, even though it's just barely, I think it's surviving 4. And we're in a lot more balance heavy format. I'm not surprised to see something like the Articuno kind of be popping up here, but I think it's really interesting if we want to compare like Utrecht and Vancouver, obviously then going from a Europe special event to a NA regional and kind of start thinking about like what we might see at EUIC. Because I mean, both of these events, like one of the really similar themes that I'm seeing is like Lando Eye, absolutely incredible. I think there is a lot of like kind of different things going on forward. I think Raging Bolt on all these different teams, not really a surprise, but like the Landorus uptick, especially at Vancouver, I think caught me a little off guard.
Yeah, it's definitely on the rise. Like, it covers so much of the meta, right? And, like, I was actually asking this question to Barris the other day where I was like, Landorus Therian form has been, like, one of the OG kind of kings of VGC, right? And I'm like, why is suddenly in this format, like, this meta, when we've previously obviously had Landorus Incarnate, like, why is it suddenly the top dog? Like, I just was a bit confused. But then when you really break down the fact that you've got Intimidators like Incineroar and Arcanine running around, and obviously if you run a special variant, it really doesn't care about those. And then the coverage with Earth Power and Sludge Bomb does hit so much of the meta, stacking up with Sheer Force and all of this. It's phenomenal. But I keep thinking, like, it had access to this before, surely. But it must be Terrestrialization that's really swung the momentum in its favor.
Well, it had to be too, because
100%.
looking at something like Urshifu, like, Urshifu just kind of bops it, right? But if you have the Terrestrialization, I mean, you're kind of just set. And I think the fact that before there wasn't those really strong paradoxes and like the specifically Raging Bolt, but since Raging Bolt can kind of checkmate a little bit, having like the ability to run them together, I think is just super, super solid, and people just kind of learning and adapting a little bit more with it.
Yeah, I would definitely say the reason Landorus is so good now is that, as Barish mentioned, the Earth Power Sludge Bomb combination is unless there's a steel type with levitate out there, I guess Bronzong, right? So Bronzong is the only Pokemon out there that does not just get hard hit by Landorus in this format. And then the biggest issue, like, people tried to use Landorus Incarnate before, like, people, tried to top cut events in previous National Dex formats. But the issue is Landorus Therian being 4 times weak to ice didn't matter because you were Choice Scarf and you were clicking Earthquake, you're clicking Rock Slide to hopefully get a flinch before they click Ice Beam. But the Sheer Force version had no defensive help. And it was like kind of in a weird speed tier, so you didn't want to run Scarf on it because you want to run Life Orb Sheer Force. So that typing was really detrimental on Landorus Incarnate until now, because now Landorus is a Steel type or a Poison type or whatever type you want to turn it into. Anything it wants to be. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think specifically looking at like Utrecht and Vancouver, I want to talk about a couple of different archetypes going into Europe and like kind of what we can maybe look at and kind of expect, because internationals, I mean, first off, EUIC is humongous. That sold out instantly. There is a lot of top players that did not get into this event, so it's definitely going to be like the best competition. Like it everybody's coming out,
right? Yeah. Like it went live at like I think it was like 7 p.m. German time, and by 1 minute past, it was already sold out. Like that was crazy, actually crazy.
It was nuts. And like there ended up being a group of players. We were like playing Lethal Company until like 4 a.m. because like on East Coast.
Oh yeah, you had to stay awake for it. Oh
yeah,
God.
So they could all like try and register, and like a lot of them like ended up getting in. Like we were literally like counting down like the seconds, and then there was still others that weren't able to get in. And like that was 4 a.m. for people out here, and people were staying up so they can get that spot, which is nuts, honestly. So this is gonna be a stacked event.
For sure. And it always is. Like, EUIC, particularly at I think the point that it's at in the year as well, is like where a lot of trainers are close to invites, but they haven't necessarily got them yet. And for a lot of them, maybe they can't necessarily, afford or be able to have the time to travel to loads of different regionals and special events. So they kind of maybe pin a lot of pressure on EUIC. And that really does become like the question of, will I qualify for Worlds or not? And that's a lot for these players coming into this event.
100%.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we were, Sierra and I, we were talking about it in Vancouver, and we start to look at the roadmap and the graphic and how much of it is actually grayed out already. And it doesn't feel like we spent that long, but there really is not many events. There's only 3 regionals left in North America. I'm not sure how many regionals
there's only 2 in Europe. There's
only 2
Stockholm
left.
And Bologna, the Italy one.
There you go.
That was very, very well done. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes great.
That makes the pressure even tougher on the European players, especially the ones that like they lost the sign up roulette in 1 minute where they weren't even able to sign up for UIC. Now that's even less opportunities to get championship points.
Yeah, it's tough, really, really tough. But it's going to be a good event. Like the players who have made it in, they're going to be wanting to put on like a show. And I think one thing that we've noticed with particularly internationals in the past couple of years is just the magnitude of those events has just gone up and up and up. Whether it's like the atmosphere, the stage, the broadcast, to the player experience, like it's not just so much about the competitive side as well. Like the experience of these events is incredible. There's so many different Pokemon themed things that you can get involved with. And so I think that's encouraged a lot more spectators to come along. And then also for our players, people who, want to support them but don't want to play are also then more kind of incentivized, which is totally a word now, to come along to these events as well. And so they kind of just keep growing. And I'm really interested to see how this EUIC stacks up against last year's, because it's in the same location. We've got the Pokemon Center. We've got everything almost like it was last year. And I'm just really interested to see how it's going to be elevated this year.
Yeah, and it'll be fun. I'll definitely try and make sure send pictures to Twitter so people can try and see that experience if you don't get to come along. But talking about the teams, that's what I want to dive into, because we got the NA side of things and we have the EU side of things. So I feel like this could be a really fun discussion around this.
I have to show you. This is my notes. So I take notes obviously before the event, and these were some of my lovely notes I made today.
Ooh.
but it's got the teams of that's just disappeared. It's got the teams of the last couple of events, so I will be able to contribute.
She's so smart. She's so smart. Yeah, it's I'll go into a little bit of like the prep going into an event later, because that's something me and I could talk about. But if I say one more time, we're gonna talk about teams and the viewers get baited, I'm gonna feel terrible. So
let's do teams. Let's go.
Let's talk about teams. First off, let's talk about balance, because as we said, for NA, that's a big thing going on right now. Even in EU, I mean, we got to see the Articuno team pop off because there is so much balance. I don't really think balance is gonna go any, like, it's balance, right? Like, I feel like this is just gonna be a solid, consistent choice going into the event, no matter whether EU or NA.
I agree. There'll be a lot of balance for sure.
Well, I mean, we know it's not going anywhere, especially because last year, right, Paul 201 with Palance, the Palafin Balance team. So we know if, I don't know if Paul's coming back to defend his title or not, but certainly Americans that will be flying out there, they won't be alone in trying to run. It's probably like, it's crazy sometimes. Like, you see when the Justin Tang or other people, like, they make the tweet with the day 2 like graphic, like the usage charts, and they're like, "Oh, I found my EUIC team," or "Oh, I found my Vancouver team." It's just like the top 6 Pokemon, and it really like it is always interesting that you could literally, your team could be Fluttermane, Rillaboom, Incineroar. I said Thunderclap again, bro. This is brutal. Raging Bolt, Landorus, and then an Urshifu of your choice. That could legitimately be your team that you bring to an event, and those are like equally distributed throughout the top usage chart. So I think balance is definitely something you're going to have to be prepared to play against.
We think it's going to be typical balance or like weird balance, though, because like you say, like Paul
like
had Palance, right?
Balance?
And yeah, because like Paul last year, even when you look at the team, I mean, we have like the balance, like group Flutter, we had regular Arcanine, because that's what we had then, the Amoonguss, the Palafin, and then this had Ting-Lu and Roaring Moon, which when I think of like a typical balance, that isn't necessarily like the first like ding in my mind. It's a little bit more out there, and like there is obviously different ways to be building like a balanced sort of core. So do you think it's going to be like the very atypical balance that we are just kind of picking off the top of the usage, or do we think it'll be like the ones that are really kind of push that limits? Because we did see Scott with the P2, Roaring Moon, Lando, Incin, Golden Go, Amoonguss, which is a little bit more of a different take on things. And there's also things like Gouging Fire as well.
Yeah, Gouging Fire is definitely a Pokemon I got my eye on, particularly following kind of James's victory as well. Because I mean, it's Pokemon I loved it. I call it Partiente because it's just like, it's here to have a good time. He's got his hat on. He's like ready to have a little dance down the street. Like I just love it. I think it's a great Pokemon. But I think that in terms of balance, like again, I kind of always allude back to like the Fire, Water, Grass core for that consistency and rotation. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. Players aren't going to deviate too far from that. But where the interesting bit will be, and I say interesting with a pinch of salt because there aren't many options, but I want to see if it's going to be more a dominance of Rillaboom, Amoonguss, or Ogerpon for the kind of grass slot in that team. Like, for example, in EU, we had in, what was our previous event? Dortmund. The Amoonguss was on that top 12 graphic. And then in Utrecht, it was not there at all for day 2. And the Pokemon that had replaced it was Chi-Pao. So considering that, particularly at that event, Chi-Pao's then high in the usages, and it was there were 2 Articuno and a load of Ninetales in top 8. So Ice is definitely kind of on the rise a little bit. And so Pokemon like Ogerpon, like Wellspring, that is not only, especially defensively bulky, but also has that kind of grass and water typing to kind of neutralize a little bit of that ice threat. I wonder if that's going to emerge as a little bit more of the stronger grass type of that core.
It's funny, though, that like, because whenever I think of like EU, I think more of like Amoonguss. So like I think that's so interesting that like for Utrecht, it didn't show up in the day 2, but we get back to Vancouver and it was Wellspring Ogerpon 33.3%, Amoonguss 30.6%, Rillaboom 27.8%, Heartflame Ogerpon 22.2%. So there's a bunch of different grass types on there. I think that's the most repeated type across the day 2. But the bounce back of Amoonguss in particular, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like Amoonguss is still strong in NA. It's just kind of run away in EU for some reason. It doesn't run very fast. It's a mushroom. But it tries its best. But I think for me, the thing that's interesting with NA as well is the kind of Ogerpon battle that's going on at the minute. Is it Hearthflame or is it Wellspring? Because in Knoxville there wasn't Hearthflame on that graphic, but then it kind of crept up in Vancouver. And I think there seems to be a nod to moving to a more offensive approach from a lot of the NA teams as well, like deal big damage and deal it fast. So that's possibly why, particularly Swords Dance, Hearthflame, Ogerpon is kind of emerging a little bit more now.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense too, because I remember we even talked about it when we talked about a lot of things, Sierra and I, when we were killing like 5 hours of downtime in Vancouver. But one of the things we did mention was that there were 4 grass types. Thank you. There were 4 grass types in top 12, and really it was only Incineroar and Heartflame as fire types. But that also probably is why Landorus is so high. Excuse me. Bless you. So that's probably why Landorus is so high, because of those really strong Life Orb Sludge Bombs, especially if you Terra Poison as well. And that, like, I would love to see other fire types, like we saw Gouging Fire creep in there to try to punish these grass types, because, like, Lou, you know, historically, grass is not a strong VGC typing. It's pretty much been Amoonguss on its own little island, and then Rillaboom came around. Right, like grass is significantly stronger now in Generation 9 than it has historically been in VGC, and so maybe that's why, you know, Roaring Moon with Terra Flying, or, you know, other or the Sludge Bombs from Landorus Incarnate, or other ways to start punishing these grass types. Because I would be surprised if the team that wins EUIC does not have, like, you know, Chien Pao plus Landorus Incarnate plus Incineroar plus, you know, another thing that can handle grass types.
Yeah, because grass, I think, really has been strong in the terrestrialization era because of its defensive capabilities. Particularly on Pokemon like, for example, Heatran at one point was like the best grass type, because of Flash Fire, you know, you could really just like not touch it. And I think using it defensively in a pool of water Pokemon with Urshifu and other things like that, I think was really, really nice for that typing. But as you've said, like, people are coddling onto it. Ice is on the rise. You have the sludge bombing Landorus everywhere. Fire types everywhere. It isn't as easy at the moment. And Pokemon, even like Iron Bundle, it's not, you know, making a statement in the usage stats, but I am seeing it rising up a lot more. And particularly even in like the junior and senior division, there's a lot more Iron Bundle coming forward, just because it's fast and it hits hard and has that ice coverage. But also with Incineroar kind of coming up, you want to make sure that you have something like a Hydro Pump to deal with it too.
I think part of the thing with the grass types just kind of getting better too is that we've had better grass types. Like,
true.
Like, okay, yeah, in the past it was only Amoonguss, because what other grass type are you gonna use? Like
Superior, James Boyd.
Sceptile, you know,
Venusaur
like,
had a moment. Venusaur
did
had
have a moment.
But Venusaur's not even a grass type. And Venusaur is a sleep powder clicker. You know what I mean? Like at least Amoonguss used its grass typing. Yeah. Venusaur just clicks sleep powder.
But I think you make a point there. The grass types like Venusaur and Lilligant were only really applicable when paired with Sun. On their own, they couldn't stand alone, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, whereas now, like, Rillaboom, I mean, you have priority, you have super powerful attack and Woodhammer, you can have a coverage move, U-turn, get out, like, pivoting is so strong. Also just fake out pressure, right? So it's like, we have a better grass type. You look at the Ogerpons, absolutely incredibly strong Pokemon, right? And you can use them more defensively, you can use them a bit more offensively. I mean, of course people are going to use that. And I think too what's actually helping the grass types is because of terrestrialization. It's not just that grass is a good defensive type for other Pokemon. Gesundheit.
Sorry.
You're good. It's not just that like other Pokemon can turn into grass to be defensive, but also if you have a grass type and you're staring down, I don't know, a Lando with a poison type move, you're staring down a Bleakwind Storm or something, you can then tear out of the grass type. So you're kind of just like really well prepared for the situation, either or. So it's like you have the good, strong defensive typing of grass, but when it's a hindrance, you can get out of it, which I think has just been super, super nice for the type whatsoever. But I said Bleakwind Storm. I said the words. So we got to talk about Tailwind next. And James had a lot of thoughts about Tailwind and why it was kind of fallen off lately. I definitely think we're kind of just a little too far along in our format right now for consistency in like a straight Tailwind team. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tailwind teams that have two different modes, the Tailwind and the Trick Room, etc. But I don't think we're going to see that all out offensive in this world of balance right now.
I agree with you. I'm seeing a transition to more things like Icy Wind or Electro Web, where you're at least dealing some chip damage, maybe break a cheeky focus sash, that kind of thing. But I think a big part as well is that Tornadoes just isn't safe. Like, I feel like a broken record keep talking about like ice types, but it's legitimately there. And there's some decent rock type coverage out there as well. Arcanine is still very prevalent. There's Glamora as well with Media Beam, just trying to absolutely bop away either an Incineroar or a Tornadus from the field. And I feel like Tornadus is only really safe at the minute if you put your terrestrialization into it. And that can be really costly in the rest of the game. So I think you're right, going straight for that Tailwind isn't really going to be something that we're going to see, but it will be more strategic placements of like maybe a Flutter main going for Icy Wind, and then the partner Pokemon dealing the KO, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because like Joe Brown, you even like called it out when we had our finals in Vancouver. Like there's a speed control. Like we kind of just moved straight away from that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you don't need speed control when you have priority moves, right? And so on both ends, they had Thunderclap available. They had Grassy Glide, obviously Fake Out from Incineroar and Rillaboom as well. So your Raging Bolt doesn't need to invest in speed if you have Incineroar and Rillaboom next to it, who are able to just fake out one target per turn, and then you can just target into that slot because it's not going to be moving. So I think to back your point on Tornadus, it's tough out here for Tornadus trying to do what it did in Regulation D, right? Which was click Tailwind, click Rain Dance, and then let Terra Water or Shifu just knock everything out. Like that archetype and that strategy has very much been hindered. And I think a more traditional Tornadus with Tailwind and then maybe Air Slash instead of Bleak Wind Storm, maybe other moves that you can try to. I think that probably works better. Like I know we saw I'm forgetting the player's name that we casted Sierra day one that had Arch Aladon with the Tornadus next to it. Had Tornadus Pelipper, and they both had the what's the water or the move that changes typing based on the weather, Weather Ball. Remember, they had Tornadus, Pelipper, and both of them had Weather Ball, and so I think you probably have to bring Tornadus back to being a full 95% support Pokemon, like where it used to thrive, because it was getting away with nonsense in Regulation D and Regulation E, honestly, and I don't think it can't keep up with Raging Bolt that has electric attacks to punish it, and obviously all the other Pokemon that can hit it pretty hard.
Well, you're talking about the rain, so we'll talk about different weather stuff going into EUIC. And normally snow wouldn't be at the forefront of the conversation, but it obviously is something that we need to talk about, considering more Ice type moves coming out there as well. I mean, that did most recently win the most recent special event in Europe.
Yeah, I remember I did like the winners interview with Nick already after his win, and I kind of said, EUIC, and bless them, they're not going to be there, which is also really unfortunate. But Nikhil said that we shouldn't expect to see it necessarily picked up like this kind of snow mode, and particularly that core of the Articuno and Lone Ninetales at EUIC, because it was very much a call coming into this event, and if anything, people are going to try and counter it. So I would probably expect a lot of weather. I really want to see a weather war. I'm definitely that trainer and commentator that loves a good old-fashioned, like, water versus sun. Like, I miss the Groudon Kyogre days, and I know that's something we'll probably touch on a little bit later, talking about what's coming up in the future. But I think there's going to be more of a rise of sun, if anything, weather-wise. I think Torkold's coming back, or at the very least, something like a sunny day user, just to be able to not only counteract other weathers and cross them out with like rain or whatever, but also photosynthesis is one of those abilities that can be so broken if you're able to, board position correctly.
I feel like one of the only sun users still out there. Sun is so difficult because there's a few different ways you could be running sun, of course. I'm still running like a Reg C sun version of the team, so it's definitely not going to be the same sun version you'd see. But I think the fact that Torkold...
It's got a Slitherwing on it though, right? It has got a Slitherwing. It does,
of course, of course.
Good.
So it is so fun because you can be getting the photosynthesis boost on a bunch of different paradoxes. Flutter Mane with choice specs hits like so much damage. I currently have Great Tusk because I think it's fun. I have Jump Left and Sleep Powder. I think that the biggest issue is that the team kind of struggles outside of Sun. And it's kind of like there's a lot of different things that are out there kind of in the meta that your opponent can also take advantage of. Like, sure, I can then get the sun, but they can also fire off like a powerful like Ivy Cudgel from a Hearthstone Ogre Pawn. They can get a powerful Flare Blitz. Like there's a lot of different moves that I just don't necessarily appreciate. And I'm also setting up their Fluttermane. I'm setting up their Raging Bolts.
True.
Like
yeah.
It's hard because you don't necessarily just get to play the game for yourself. Whereas if you were having like a team that had your Pin Urchin and like only like your Iron, like your future paradoxes, maybe people wouldn't be using them too often because you're not having, you know, you won't activate the Fluttermane. But I think that's a little bit tough. I'm curious though with Weather, because Weather was something that we definitely thought we'd see a lot of in Vancouver. We did get to see a bunch of it, but it wasn't quite to the success that maybe I'd have expected. The best performing Weather was a Tyranitar by Michael Zhang in top 4, and it wasn't on a Sand team. It was just he got just that Tyranitar. He likes chilling. Tyranitar. So I'm curious then just how much Weather will go into EUIC. I also don't think, based off of the meta and how the teams are performing, that people are actually respecting this Snow team at all, honestly.
Maybe people will be caught off guard thinking like, nah, I mean, it definitely was proven to not be a gimmick team. It had a lot of composure within it, but I think people will still just underestimate it, maybe find a way to counter it, you know, something like double rock slide or something. But the one thing I really liked about the team, so I practiced it myself, was I really love the Alolan Ninetales. You know, it's able to set up that Aurora Veil really, really nicely, and particularly if you're up against a lot of Pokemon that can deal super effective damage to Alolan Ninetales. You can just switch into that Fire Terror, and that defensive capability has honestly given me so much survivability on the field that I'm almost always able to set up that Aurora Veil. And it's really, really nice then for the longevity of the match. So I think, if anything, maybe not so much Articuno, but I can kind of see Alolan Ninetales being picked up, even throwing something like the Iron Bundle on, just to give, you know, that extra defense boost to Iron Bundle, I think could be really nice for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been screaming from the top of mountains how good Alolan Ninetales is for generations now, and like,
scream it some more, Joe.
I almost got there in 2017 with Sam Pandelis getting second at Worlds, losing to Ryota. But he wins Worlds if Ryota doesn't have Brick Break Marowak. So that's how close I was to being correct. And then 2018, Generation 8, my favorite archetype was the G-Max Lapras team, which was effectively Alolan Ninetales with a G-Max because it set up the Aurora Veil for you with G-Max Resonance. And now here, like, I think for a lot of the testing I've tried to do, because I always try to make Alolan Ninetales work, I think Alolan Ninetales and Urshifu are just best friends. Like, they are. Nobody knows it. I'm hoping somebody can fulfill it together. Obviously, Nikhil did because he had the Urshifu single strike on the team there. But, like, one of the toughest parts with that team, when you look at it, Hisuian Arcanine has an awful typing, and Urshifu single strike, not investing in bulk. Like, people usually think of bulky Pokemon and then like, oh, if I can get Raging Bolt behind screens and click Calm On 5 times, I can win. But the Aurora Veil actually helps your frail Pokemon more because, like, I remember I ran a team back in 2017 with Kartana and like Crocodile, Tapu Fini, stuff like that. That like the crux of it was get Aurora Veil up and then let Kartana sweep. And Kartana, we all know, has awful special defense, and you could actually live a special attack because Aurora Veil was up. So everyone wants to make a bulky Pokemon better with screens, but I think just allowing Hisuian Arcanine to live a hit it's not supposed to, or Shifu to live a hit that it's not supposed to without any investment means that's one more Choice Band Rock Slide or E-Speed. That's one more super strong Sucker Punch or Wicked Blow than you're supposed to get in a normal matchup. So I really hope, like, if you could do a team, I don't know, I don't know who's playing this weekend if they're not sold on the team, but you could do like Alolan Ninetales, or Shifu, either Rapid or Single Strike, Swords Dance, Ogerpon, Hearthflame with Rillaboom next to it. Like, I really think it could pop off.
I mean, it's what EUIC before, right? Simone Sambito in 2018 won EUIC with Alolan Ninetales.
Right.
I just want to say, though, unless, like, I'm crazy, it wasn't an Urshifu on the team. It was an Ogerspawn Wellspring coming out from...
Yeah, there was no Urshifu on the team.
You got a little bit of revisionist history there, Joe. You're like, I want it to work so bad. I'm certain this won the special event. Hey, if anybody's looking for some spice...
All right, so...
Ogerpon Wellspring, Alolan Ninetales, Articuno,
Yeah.
Hisuian Arcanine,
Yeah.
Lando
Arcanine.
I, Raging Bolt.
Okay, I must have thought the Raging Bolt was Urshifu. I apologize.
You just added a 7th boat. You're just like, you
You're
know what?
just
If I
changing
could
his
have a
name.
7th slot, I
Yeah.
could bring this in
I don't know.
here. But
Yeah.
Had a
It's
brain
just
fart,
Raging
you know?
Bolt. You never remember the name, so 1 minute it's like Thundercloud, then it's Urshifu. Like, it'll be Gastrodon next, then it'll be okay.
Yeah.
no, this definitely is strong. It'll be interesting to see like if there's different versions of it that pop up. But like looking at the
Yeah.
team, even though like your points of like, oh, looking at the katana, it'll allow it to live hits. I feel like there's so much damage mitigation on this team, considering you do have that Intimidate. The Raging Bolt is more of the supportive set with like the Snarl Electro Web. You can drop the special attack, or you can drop the attack, and then something like your Articuno is just not going to perish, and you can fire off blizzards or sheer colds or
Mhm.
whatever you want. Like I think it's just a really well balanced, constructed team, which I didn't actually really think I'd ever be saying about a snow team that has sheer cold on it, unironically.
But
So,
2 protects
you
is
know?
so scary. I think that's what
Yeah.
Nikhil made it work because it's it's his brainchild or whatever. But like when you just use the rental code, 2 protects is really difficult to play around.
Yes, but like also if you're not gonna get KO'd, you're not really the biggest thing looking at it is like I'm not gonna want to be faked out, and I think that might be where the team kind of struggles a little bit, since there is so much fake out. I mean, Brady had like the double pivoting, double fake out with Rilla and Sin, right? And
Yeah.
considering it is fire on the Ninetales, all of a sudden you could get faked out, attacked, and then hit into again the next turn. You'll never have a chance to set up that Aurora Veil. So I definitely think that's the biggest shortcoming. But I also offhand, you'd be changing so many like fundamental parts of this team by having something else. If anything, you could get rid of Helping Hand on Alola Ninetales, but like that's
Helping
just
it
going to be have
Trispec's
to
Blizzard kind of hype.
Yeah, so that's kind of
It's
the
insane.
hard part about that. So hey,
And even if it's next to
works.
Landorus, it just destroys souls, you know? A Helping Hand
Yeah.
Sludge Bomb or a Helping Hand Earth Power, like, it's just disgusting damage. And
Yeah.
I just, you don't use it all the time, don't get me wrong, but when you do use it, it's just like, it's devastating. I
Kinda
think
like-
the Arcanine could be dropped, though, for Incy. Not just because I like Incy, but I do think that could be a switch.
I was going to ask the other way around. I was going to ask, do you anticipate, you two are going to see it there. Do you anticipate Hisuian Arcanine on the rise in EUIC because you have Tornadus, you have Incineroar's #1 usage? Like, I kind of like the Hisuian Arcanine into Incineroar. Like, do you think European players still like Hisuian Arcanine as an option?
I think-
It's
I
good
think
in
they
the,
like
it's good in the
it.
Gouging Fire also. Gouging Fire just won a regional.
Yeah, if anything, I think that's on the rise. Like, Hearthflow Mogapon, it's definitely a bit more dominant in NA. Like, it was on Wolf's winning team in Charlotte, but it was also on Antonio Sanchez's winning team over here in Liverpool, I want to say. But then since then, it kind of hasn't been very dominant. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Hearthflame Ogapon coming back into fruition. Or Gouging Fire. Like, I personally want to see more Gouging Fire. I think it's a really awesome Pokemon. I like the utility it has. I like the use of Howl, for example, to be able to be that supportive Pokemon as well, helping a partner out. But Incineroar's still going to be #1. Like, I think that's very clear on the fire types. It's going to be that.
I'm just hard pressed to say that Hisuian Arcanine's gonna have like a huge rise in anything. Like maybe a couple people pick it up, and like maybe we'll see a few more of it just because of the sheer amount of numbers at EUIC. But realistically, I feel like a lot of the times you do have to commit in your Terra to it, or it dies. Or you can commit your Terra to it, Terra Fairy Arcanine. You think you're good. And you're also going to lose it. You're going to get one powerful attack off, and then you lose the Pokemon. And for the Intimidator on your team, I think that's kind of hard. Like, it's kind of hard to justify that, especially since you're not getting that fake out with Incineroar. A little bit of more bulk that Incineroar has, and just a couple of different ways. Like, Incineroar, you just have so much more. Whereas, yeah, the Hisuian Arcanine is kind of just seems more like a blow something up. And if you don't do that, then you just kind of brought 3 Pokemon to the match. And if you do blow something up, it's still a 1-for-1 trade and less like, I don't know what your opponent's running at that point, which I think that's why it's the most difficult for me, especially too, if you need that damage output, you're going to be running a choice band, but then you're locked. I hate choice items in general. I think for a Pokemon like Hisuian Arcanine, where you have pretty decent coverage, to have it locked into something is kind of like then oh wait, I have to switch it out, but then you're putting something else under the bus. I'm just not the biggest fan personally.
I think you're right though, it has to be choice banned, and that can be super limiting. Like we saw the issues of that with Dragonite, for example, when everyone was running like choice band Dragonite, normal terrestrialization, and it just was very, very limiting, and people counted it very easily. The meta caught on really quick, and I think it's the same with Arcanine. Like I know some people have run like Berry on it, or the occasional Life Orb I've seen running around, but the Terra type has to be so utilized on Arcanine that I think it's really debilitating on the team.
And you can just get intimidated down yourself. Like, at least Dragonite, you have the inner focus, so you're not getting your own stats drop, but all of a sudden you lead this Arcanine, you're looking to, I'm going to head smash this Incineroar, and the Incineroar can either just be like, all right, well, you're intimidated, now you can't do anything, or I can fake you out and I'll KO you, or I'll I don't know, like a Terra, and you can't, like, it's just, I don't know. I think it's kind of difficult to justify those types of Pokemon right now, if it's only kind of like a one thing, but we're talking about one way to be doing things. Look at that transition. Go, Sierra, go. Talk about Trick Room heading into this event, because that's definitely, I know Joe Brown's a big Trick Room person.
Well, not only that, but in my predictions for our EUIC hot takes, if anyone watched the EUIC pre-show last week, I said they kind of cut off my thing, and I was like, all right, whatever.
No.
But I said Blood Moon Ursaluna was going to win EUIC, and I was just kind of using it as a Trick Room template, as just the first Pokemon I thought of. And fun fact, I gave 2 hot takes that day. My other hot take that they did not use, I was a little upset, is I said I expect at least 5 Taylor Swift references from Lou on commentary at EUIC. And they didn't throw that one into the reel.
There's going to be more than 5, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's a little thing I do on my commentary. Every single international or like Worlds event, I drop a Taylor Swift album, the whole song title list, in a day. Generally speaking, I try and get it in a day. And I have one mapped out for EUIC, and it is going to be the Tortured Poets department. Even though the album hasn't been released, the set list, like the song list has. Some of them are very easy. Like one of them is literally So Long London.
Oh, well, there you go.
Think I can do that one, guys. I think. But then, some of the other ones are going to be interesting. So Sierra, be ready for some really wild card things from me, and just go. It must be a Taylor thing.
I'm just gonna if you go too. I'm not gonna be. If you go too off the wall here, I'm calling your ass out. You just say the most unhinged stuff, and I'll be like, all right, Taylor, and I'm just moving on. I'm like, I'm not even entertaining it.
I would be so gone. I'd be so gone. Because there's definitely some that I've done, and they're really seamless, right? And I'm really proud of them. And then there are some others, and they are so set up. And I remember there was one with Rosemary, and it was the last day. It was our last match. So I was like, I have 3 songs left. I have to get them all in. I don't have a choice. And it was literally in our intro, 2 minutes in, I managed to get all 3 of them in, and she just looked at me like, I don't understand. I think it was, that's how you get the girl. I got in with the graphic about Fluttermane, where it had been knocked off the #1 spot. And I said something like, oh, that's how you get the girl to give you the side eye, just by coming for its #1 spot on the usage stats. And literally she just looked at me like, I want to die. I can't believe I just let you do that. I'm like, well... I will go on
you're committed.
I saw the master at work in Oceania when Lou and I worked together. It's like I was sitting next to Beethoven. I was watching Beethoven, figure out on the piano what type of melody he wanted to create. That's what it felt like.
Because you vibe with me, because I remember it clearly.
Yeah, I said Don Dozo's "It's Me, I'm the Problem" or whatever that song is.
Because I said, let's talk about Don Dozo, the anti-hero himself, and then you burst out laughing, and you were like, yeah, Don Dozo's a bit like, hi, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me, and I was just gone.
Yeah, because I'm a good teammate, okay? Okay, Sierra. I lift my teammates up, okay? I don't go, okay, Taylor, and shut her gimmick down. It's a team effort here.
Sierra's gonna not study Pokemon. She's gonna be looking up all these Taylor Swift references, so she's prepared.
I listen to too much Taylor Swift. I'm not gonna lie.
Cool.
Don't worry.
Back to Trick Room.
Back to Trick. I don't know how we got from right. That's a Trick Room. I don't know. It'll be, I don't know. I think just Trick Room's hard. I think there'll be a couple of dang good Trick Room users. I do not think it's going to make the biggest splash. I think it'll do the normal thing that it does is like you'll have your one person in top 8 that has a bit more of a Trick Roomy mode, something that's like maybe more of a Trick Room size spam, and then that's going to be one and done. Or like a soft Trick Room where you have your, what I like to call a Zoom room, where you can have your Trick Room or you can have your Tailwind, you have them both together. And I don't think they're the most consistent teams at times, but I think it can get it done.
I'm
That's
with you on
cute
this.
name.
Like,
You should trademark that.
You
Thank
should.
you.
You should.
Thank you.
I'm also kind of glad if Trick Room goes away. So, like, the giraffe Pokemon. I can't say its name. I call it for a giraffe. And that's what we're going to go with here, okay? I don't know why it's put fridge in the middle of its name, but it does. And for a giraffe has definitely been, like, the big Trick Room setter of all of the recent regulations. And, like, it was on Wolf's team, Antonio's team, and Florian's team, all, like, regional winners in Regulation F. And in EU, it's still very much on the usage stats. It was there in Dortmund, it was there in Utrecht Day 2. But in NA, it's definitely fallen off. And I think it's not actually there so much because of Trick Room, but more just because of like priority blocking. You know, particularly with Thunderclap on the rise, you need to make sure that you have something to kind of try and prevent that.
It's interesting though, because I mean, we're looking at teams now and there's quite a few different ways of priority. We're having double fake out, we're having grassy glide, we're having the thunderclaps, but we're not actually really seeing the resurgence of Fergraph. It popped up as an over response to Alex Underhill's 5 priority team. It kind of stuck around for a bit. Wolf did fantastic with it, so it stuck around a little bit longer. And then everyone just kind of stopped. There's like, okay, well, I'll just get priorityed, I guess. So I'm curious if that will make a little bit of a stand then at EUIC, if people are kind of sick of the double fake out, because some teams just get completely shut down if they can't be like going for those fake outs, because that's going to be when they're setting up their Raging Bull. That's when they're going to substitute with their Landorus. So I don't know.
I would definitely expect Fergraph to be back on the rise. I know it's fallen off the usage graphic the last couple events, at least in North America, but I think after that display that James and Brady put on in the finals in Vancouver, like anybody that was watching it and is now, you know, building and anticipating going to EUSC, like you're like, man, this fake out pivot nonsense is really tough to deal with. And then plus James had the meadow plate, grassy glides doing even more damage. So even when the Raging Bull felt like it was close enough, it still was getting hit by priority attacks. And just the tough part with Fergraph is it's a Pokemon that it's just almost enough, right? Like we've talked with so many players that have used it. It almost takes the hit well enough. It almost does enough damage. Like it almost lives long enough to sit Trick Room and use your throat spray and everything. And it's like 95% there of a fully like competitively viable Pokemon, but like that 5% is what makes it like people drop it. So you have to wonder like what other Trick Room options people are going to use if they don't want to commit to Fergraph. And obviously the first one you think of is Porygon 2, which is kind of had like a glow up in Scarlet and Violet, because now you're just clicking Terra Blast every turn and instead of clicking Trick Room and Try Attack and Recover, because it gets the stab Terra Blast. So the other options are Cresselia, right, which is another Pokemon that people kind of drop Cresselia for Fergraph. So if you're not going to run Fergraph, you're not going to run Cresselia either. So it is kind of tough right now for the Trick Room setters, at least, because we have sweepers. We have Blood Moon Ursaluna, regular Ursaluna, a Torkoal or something like that. Like there are Pokemon that could do well in Trick Room. It's just the setters right now are just not being able to get set up consistently.
It's a hard world, so that's why I think there's like not necessarily the consistency coming out. I definitely think it takes a very talented trainer and a very good team to kind of be unlocking that, but I'd be intrigued to see if there's a little bit of a stand there. And the last stuff that we have to talk about is, I have it listed down here as funky stuff. I actually used a different word that starts with S, that I've already had my one swear for the podcast, so I'm not going to drop that one. But I'm talking about your size spam, your Dondozo, stuff like, you know, the Iron Maw, Komao, like P2, like not necessarily like all bad stuff, because there definitely is versions of the team that do have the consistency.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, some of these Pokemon can be kind of forced. Some of these archetypes can be kind of forced, and they can kind of fall a little bit flat when you're not necessarily prepared to go up against the field. Like if Articuno wasn't in weather, I would put it kind of in this category as well. This is where you'd find your 2/2/2
rogue choices, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
That's why she's the best, Sierra. Because we're over here struggling for our lives to figure out how to explain this, and Lou's like the rogue choice. She's just the best.
I didn't hesitate on how I describe it. I put it down as funky shit. Like, what do you mean? I didn't hesitate. I knew exactly what I wanted to say.
Can you say this weekend though? Can you say the rogue choice, or can you say funky shit on the broadcast?
Well, that's why I said funky stuff. I can't drop that one.
Yeah.
You know, but we think we're gonna see like one of these kind of go all the way. I think like we're kind of too far along with like balance, where I would still expect it to be a balance plus a P2, balance plus, as opposed to something built around.
You know, like particularly as a commentator and a viewer for this event, like EUIC to me is like the most exciting thing. So I want to see more than the same 6 Pokemon every single time. Like there's only so many times you can make a fake out from Incineroar sound intense. You know, it's like there's not a lot. Particularly for me, it's mirrors. Mirrors absolutely fry my head. So as someone who is going to be commentating this event, I really want some interesting Pokemon to talk about. And I think the 2 that I've kind of got my eye on is Walking Wake being one of them.
So bad.
I know, but I've seen some of them, and I'm like, and I've seen them win. I'm like, okay.
So it's bad.
Walking Wake, yeah, but I want to see it. I'm not saying it's gonna win.
Have you considered that
I'm
is
saying
bad?
I want it there. I mean, Pink Gastrodon's bad, but you know we're not here to talk about that right now.
Yeah, but we're also not going to see it win either version. So
you know, who knows? No, I kind of want to see Walking Wake. I just think because the other 2 get so much love, and you know, Raging Bolt is going to be everywhere. Gouging Fire, I really want to see it, and I would love to just, you know, be able to see it rise a little bit more in the usage. So I feel sorry for Walking Wake, because yes, it's bad. So I want it to kind of have a moment, maybe just win one game. That'd be so great. But then the other one you guys have mentioned, Dondozo. I'm a big Dondozo believer, and I really would like to see Dondozo make a comeback.
So I just gotta follow up on the Walking Wake stuff, because like I think the biggest issue with Walking Wake is it falls into it needs Sun to thrive, and Sun is definitely more of a volatile choice going on right now. I think once we get into Reg G and we have a stronger Sun setter, that then there might actually be room for this Pokemon to do better, considering that'll actually match up pretty well into the Sun setters. But right now it kind of falls into an issue of it's in an awkward speed tier. It's actually decently speedy, but it's actually still getting outsped by quite a few key Pokemon that will just absolutely bop it, right?
Yeah.
Its special defense is lacking. The special attack seems good, but you actually miss KOs on so many different things. It's unreal. And it can just be really, really difficult. And since you do get KO'd so easily, you might be able to fire off one powerful Hydro Steam, but then that's it. And then if they Terra, well, then you're cooked. And if you don't have Sun, you're going to miss the KO anyways. And it's just, it's difficult to make it work, because my revised, like, Reg F Sun team had Walking Wake, and my God, it's
no longer a team.
And it's a Terra Hog. You need to Terra it, but then you also just still get bopped because your special defense sucks.
I am so ready for Walking Wake to be at EUIC and Sierra have to, first of all, try and make it sound good, but then to see it get bodied, and then afterwards Sierra just go into this full tangent about, I told you so, why'd you
I'm not even going to try and make it sound good. Like, you know what? I will talk about the issues of Walking Wake and how I'd like to see that the team's built around to kind of counteract it. And the thing is you have to dedicate too much to it. So ultimately, it's going to suck. You need it in Tailwind, you need it in Sun, and you need to get one-hit KOs. And if you're not achieving all 3 of those, your Walking Wake is... You're going to be holding a wake for it. It ain't going to be walking no more. So it's tough. It's tough.
It does need a lot of things. I'll give you that. But, you know, it also has a dream. And I just want to see it achieve something. You know, I wanted to
That's reasoning.
Hydro, Steam, and a Dream.
Dream,
Walking Wake's
okay.
autobiography.
Oh my god, it writes itself. But yeah, other than Walking Wake, I really, really want to see Dondozo make a comeback. I've been a Dondozo fan since the beginning, and it's something I work a lot on with my junior as well. Like, she's just obsessed with Dondozo, so it's kind of always had a little special place in my heart. Because no matter what the format is, she's always wanted to play Dondozo, and we've always tried to make it work. Even when it really, really doesn't. And you see players like Chopper Cross just be such a Dondozo champion and just being able to pilot it in different ways. And I think for me, you see Dondozo sometimes being without Tatsugiri, and I don't like that. I'm not saying that it's not good. This is just like a purely personal thing. I think if you're having the big fish, you need a little fish too.
Oh my god, one game that I played in the Global Challenge that I was thinking of bringing for a caster battle. You're talking about you need the little fish. It was Dragapult, Dondozo, Tatsugiri, Flamigo, and 2 other Pokemon. Don't remember, doesn't matter. They led Dragapult, Tatsugiri, did endure on Tatsugiri, U-turned it, brought it to 1 HP, brought Dondozo in. Tatsu, jumps in its mouth, commander, holding Black Sludge, dies, Flamigo in. And I haven't
seen that in ages.
Normally the one that I see is the Perish Song variant, right?
Yeah.
I got what? I was done. I was cooked. Like, he sent it the Flamigo, and I was just like, that's game.
It's like they brought the whole aquarium from like Finding Nemo with all the like grime, and it's like the black sludge is slowly killing the fish, but it's like, boom, it's all okay. Dondozo's happy about this.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Wow,
it was nuts. Yeah, sorry, that was the side tangent, Joe. You're about to talk about Dondozo Tatsu.
No.
But it's true. I like it.
I think that's fair. Obviously, that was didn't. Yeah, you mentioned the Paris song version, like, because Carson and Wolf also had like something similar with NAIC on their Dondozo team. So yeah, that the
Zach Thornburg as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a different strap. But I think sometimes we get a little too big for our britches, and when Game Freak designs Pokemon certain ways, and then we just try to use it, like, people like back in the day would use like Life Orb, fully offensive Cresselia, right? Like, it's like, well, that's not what Cresselia was designed for. It's got like 130 in both defenses. It learns every supportive move on the planet, and you're out here trying to sweep with it, which I respect it, and obviously it does work sometimes if you get it to work. But like, Dondozo was clearly intended to be designed with Tatsugiri in mind, so it's balanced. That's why it's got like garbage speed, because its real speed is whatever its +2 speed is with Tatsugiri. And when people use the like the like leftovers yawn, just bulky water type Dozo, I'm just like, obviously it worked. Alex Gomez won the international championship with it. But I'm like, man, that could have been Suicune. That could have been any other bulky water type on the planet. Like, I just feel bad when Dozo is not next to Tatsugiri, because like clearly that was the intention behind the Pokemon.
Yeah, I feel you.
Just because it's intended one way, like, screw it. Let people do what they want. I think like the Dondozo teams that have been built, I think they're quite interesting in like how they were built. I think they're a little bit limited in a way because they can be kind of played around, which is where we get to see that they do have those downfalls. We got to see it kind of handled at LASC, I believe, that it just kind of was like, all right, we know the tricks of this already, but I like when we can see kind of Pokemon used in a little bit of a different way. But yeah, I think that's it for meta stuff and all like the main teams.
We're all ignoring the most important Paradox Pokemon that came out in the second DLC, and that's Iron Leaves. What's the Iron Leaves predictions, everybody? Clearly, we're going to see so much of it at EUIC.
I'd forgotten its name and wasn't really sure where you were going with that at first. So that's my take on it. If it turns up at EUIC, I'll be in for a steep learning curve, put it that way.
Because at least Walking Lake, you want to trash on Walking Lake, at least Walking Lake is not Iron Leaves.
It's so true.
That is like a whole different like rabbit hole. Oh, well, at least Iron Leaves isn't Iron Boulder. At least Iron Boulder isn't
Boulder almost
Iron
top
Thorns.
cut.
At least Iron
Boulder
Thorns isn't.
Cut, okay?
Boulder is an untapped resource. I feel like I'm glad you mentioned it because it's a Pokemon I forgot about and I've just remembered. I think it has so much potential. Nobody's found it yet. It hasn't found its spot. But when I've played with it on like the best of one ladder, it's been amazing. I just think best of 3 isn't its thing.
Best of one ladder isn't real ladder. Slitherwing dominates in best of one ladder. You think that I can win best of 3 games? No, there's a reason I'm not a regional champion yet. Like that is a whole different ballpark. Come on.
Slitherwing supremacy.
One day, if I'm not casting NAIC, I'm rolling up with Slitherwing. But it'll be good. Also, I don't know if Lou froze in the same spot for you she did for me.
You see that she's frozen on.
She's
you're just smiling away on our end, Lou. Don't worry,
you guys
it won't
still
be.
Hear me though, right?
Yeah. Don't worry, it won't be like that in the final version. So
look, I'm having a great time.
You're such a good time. Normally we do predictions going into the event. Joe Brown, do you have a list?
Ooh.
I know we were kind of talking back and forth whether who was going to make the predictions or we just.
No, I think we played. I think we played a game. We did a standoff on that one. So
we played a game of chicken of who was going to do the predictions.
I guess we could just think of some questions on the fly. So let's say there's top 8, right? There's 8 players in top 8. Which region will have the most players in top 8? Because you can't say, "Oh, Europe is the European." There's people coming all over from America, from Latin America, from Australia. Like you never know. 4 Australians could be in top 8. Like so, I think we can ask that question.
I think. Do you know what? I think it's going to be an even Steven. I think it's going to be 3 from EU, 3 from NA, and 2 choices from other regions.
Okay.
That's what I'm going with. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2 LATAM players breaking into that top 8. Particularly, after Agadi did so strong and we saw some amazing LATAM players at LAIC, particularly with some really unique choices like Tiago's Reg G, for example, that came out of nowhere all the way into finals. Like, I'm still confused how my favorite bouncy boy made it all that way. So there's just so many surprises that could potentially come out from regions that we don't get to feature on broadcast as much, that are kind of maybe cooking up some kind of secret sauce away from, I suppose, the realms of the internet. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a pretty even pegging between NA and EU players in the top 8.
Okay. Hey. Man, I'm torn between picking EU and NA here, but my first thought was NA, so I'm gonna stick with that. I think they'll have the majority, whether it's at 3 or 4. I don't see them having more than 4, just because there is a lot of really strong trainers from everywhere. But I would say 3 or 4 NA, and that will be the majority.
I'm going to go the other way around because my answer later on to who's going to win is going to dictate this point, that I think it will be heavy EU on the top cut end. So I don't know if that's like 5 EU, 2 NA, 1 other, something like that maybe. But I think EU's probably feeling pretty prime right now to perform well this weekend.
All right. Okay. Second question. Top Pokemon in day 2 usage.
Cincy.
It's a tough question. But it could be Fluttermane. You don't know.
Nah, Cincy. It's going to be the cat. I'm there. It's going to be the cat. I'm going to make it happen.
That's fair. It's
got to be NC. Like, I really do see it being... I mean, fair play. Fluttermane could be there. I think it's going to be Fluttermane, NC, or possibly even Ogerpon taking that number 1 spot.
Oh, that's right. What if Ogerpon comes out of nowhere back to where it was?
Ogerpon had the number 1 spot in day 2 usage in Knoxville, right? I want to say Knoxville.
Yeah.
Also remember, Vancouver was a smaller event, but Vancouver did have Ensign tied with Rapid Striker Shifu for first place. Fluttermane at 41, Champao at 36.
That's one thing we didn't talk about was it is Vancouver, but Rapid Strike did severely increase in usage in Vancouver compared to the last 4 or 5 Regulation F events where Single Strike was significantly higher usage than Rapid Strike.
Yeah, I saw that. Because EU was a little bit more balanced. They had both in the top 12 for the past 2 events. Whereas, like you said, in NA, it was really all about Single Strike, and then Rapid Strike's a little bit like, I'm still here, guys. All right? Stop trash talking me. I'm here.
I think, for myself, I'm going to have to say Fluttermane. I think that There's been a couple of attackers that have been picked up over Fluttermane. I think it's just kind of like it's like the Amoonguss trend. People kind of drop off. They're like, wait, it's really good. And then like the best thing into Fluttermane is another Fluttermane. So more people run it. So I think Fluttermane will take it back. I think it'll be very close. I don't think Wellspring Ogre Spawn stands a chance.
I think that has to be my pick here. I can't be silly and pick the same. I can't say Incineroar or Fluttermane here because then
you can if you want.
No, but then if I'm right, then somebody else also gets the prediction points there. So I think I've got to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say Ogerpon Wellspring jumps right back up top to number 1. It's a tough call, but
solid choices all round, I think.
Okay, here's a question. Okay, I don't know if we're gonna be able to track it well because I did find the Archaludon player. His name was Tommy Quinn, who he had another name, but he also goes by Tommy. Remember, he had the Sinistra team that the Sinistra got the 2v1 comeback on stream, Sierra. So let's just, for the fun of it, what is the highest placing Archaludon team? So you don't have to say like precisely 36th or something, but top 8, top 16, top 32, top 64, top 128, highest placing Archaludon team.
No, I'm going to say precisely 36th.
I'm going to go top 32. I think top 32. There'll be one in top 32.
Oof. Let's see. Do I see? I'm just looking at Vancouver right now. Obviously, smaller event.
It's a Pokemon that people are using.
There is Archaludon in top 32. There's 2 of them, I believe. So
I don't get it. It's a Pokemon. It's a little bit like how I felt about Alolan Persian. When people were using it, it was a Pokemon I picked up, and I couldn't use it. I just didn't get it, didn't vibe with it. There was no synergy between me as a trainer and it as a Pokemon. And Archaludon is exactly that for me. I just can't play it. I just don't get it. So kudos to those who can.
Is top 48 a breaker? No, it has to be 64, right? I can't say 48.
Yeah, it'd be 64.
That's not a CP breaker. Okay, all right then. I don't want to dog on Archaludon while he's down. If you guys are saying top 32 and precisely 36, there's chance.
You just pick a number.
There's chances. My options here are top 16 or top 64, and I feel like both of those are stretches, right?
Or picking any number in between.
Be brave.
Right, I'm going to be optimistic, Lou. I'm going to be optimistic here. I'll say top 16. There'll be one Archaludon team that performs well, and I might look silly going forward, but
it's okay. It's okay. You always
we don't won't be silly. The first time,
So, all right. Fourth question. Rillaboom percentage in day 2, because this has been going up and down. Utrachu was actually at 42%. For day 2, which had a lot more players than Vancouver did, if I recall. 200 and whatever more players than Vancouver. Vancouver, it went down to 27.8 because Amoonguss came back, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna go 35%.
I think that's a good solid number.
Weird average.
That's a nice middle between the two, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because I do think that with the amount of NA players coming over, Amoonguss will rise up a little bit as well. So that EU 44% or whatever it is will drop for sure.
Yeah. All right, Jerome, what do you think?
I think 33 sounds good to me because that's like pretty much a third of the day 2 field, right? So if we think like 33%, and then that leaves 66% for the other teams that want to have a grass type. So like Amoonguss could be up there around 30-ish%. The 2 Ogerpons are also going to fill in to that spot. So I'm going to go 33%.
All right. Well, I was originally going to pick 33%.
Yeah.
I'm not picking 34% because that's a stupid answer if you're looking at this. I'm going to say 36. And I actually thinking more about it. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility here.
Did you just Price is Right, Lou? She said 35.
I did. Basically. I did, actually. I played a win. But the more I was sitting here, I was going to say 33. The more I'm just kind of thinking about Rillaboom as a Pokemon, I think, too, that Amoonguss will go up a bit. but not to the point where I think Rillaboom should be necessarily falling down too much. So like, I don't want to go below 35. Even though I did originally think 33. I think that's actually kind of disrespecting Rillaboom a little bit, since it is a pretty strong Pokemon and people are picking up more and more balance. So I'm actually 36. It might be a little Price is Righty, but I also do think it's going to be the right number. So,
and just in case it ends up at 34, which is the one number we didn't say, we'll give that tiebreaker to Lou as the guest.
Oh.
So if it's 34 or 35,
I was saying it depends on the percentage, though, if we round it up or down. So.
But normally, like, whatever one it sticks at. Well, we'll figure it out once. We'll figure this out day 2. We'll figure this out day 2. Last question is always the shot in the dark. So this is, who's going to win the whole dang thing?
It's a big question.
Okay.
We've never gotten one of these right.
I got one right. It wasn't recorded, first of all. I technically got one right in I got Shohei winning Worlds. It was not on camera.
Oh, man, okay.
That's not how this works. You've never gotten one right.
God, technically, it was not on camera, correct.
Aurelian Sula, I think, would be my choice.
That's
a good choice.
Really good guess.
Just because Aurelian has come so, like, they are one of the most consistent players. They went, 14-0 in Utrecht and only lost in the grand final. And it was like, they've come so close so many times, so many second places. That kind of, like, depth of determination has got to be there for an international, particularly EUIC. So I really hope Aurelian can go all the way and finally get that win.
That's a really solid guess. I think this is where I'm gonna play the Joseph Ivigarte card.
That's fair. That's fair.
Oh god, should I play the Barish card?
No, you don't have to. Lou's trying to be impartial. Sierra doesn't care about it being impartial, you know?
Well, I'd also because I'm looking at just Joe's international performances. So EUIC last year, unfortunately, did not quite go that way. But the EUIC the year before, top 4. NAIC the year before, top 4. Technically, top 8 LAIC. So I think
top 8 NAIC last year too, right? Against Jody.
Yeah.
Or was that 16? Am I crazy?
No. It was top 8. You're right.
Okay.
He was super consistent.
Yeah, I think wasn't it technically top 4 because he then lost to Rogov. Yeah, so top 4. So it's like the ICs have always been really, really consistent. So I do think that it actually is a pretty smart bet going into this. Knock on wood. So we'll just be whether he figures Steve out.
Yeah, always down to the last second.
Question.
Typical Ugarte fashion. It's nothing new. So
for me, I've had this answer locked in for a long time to make sure that I didn't use it at prior events, so that it wouldn't go on cooldown. And I do think Eduardo Cunha is going to win EUIC. He just got first in the Global Challenge. Global Challenge is tough on the mental to get
he
1900.
I haven't caught up yet.
Yeah, I saw you tweet it out.
By
That he got
1
first.
point.
It was like 1900 something, right? It was crazy. Also surprised he only had one DC because every story I see is every time someone's about to win, the opponent just DCs. So just surprised
my first 2 matches were DCs. That's how I started my GC challenge, and then my 3rd match I played by myself and lost, and I just quit at that point. I was like, I'm done. I've done my 3 games or whatever. I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah, I think Edu's in a really good spot right now to be the best player in Europe, potentially best player in the world. Already has his Worlds invite as well. So yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty solid pick as well. I think it was 18-18 he got in the Global Challenge. Second place was 18-17 or something. So yeah, that was a good guess. So
and he got Barcelona, right? At the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Special event, yeah.
Yeah, so very consistent play, obviously previous world champion. I think that's a really, really good take.
It is, but
I'm hoping.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. I'm super excited for EUIC.
I'm so excited to work with you again as well, big times here. We've only done one game, we did LASC together, and we did one cast, and we kind of did it for just we've been on so many events together and we've never been able to cast, right? So we were kind of please, can we get a game in, have some fun? And now we've got this awesome opportunity to hone that skill and work on the synergy, and I'm super hyped. It's gonna be really, really fun.
Yeah, I'm super excited, especially.
That would be so cool. But I mean, this
No,
is where
remember
Joe
in
as well. Like,
In
the
the
caster
stream
battle.
the caster battle.
oh
That
my
doesn't
god,
count though.
yeah,
It
but I
does
remember
count. A
that
dub
because
is a dub, Sierra.
No, I meant me and Lou casting together. The
Oh, okay.
the
yeah,
dub
that
dub
doesn't
counts.
count. But I
But
remember, like,
your dub
completely,
counts.
I think I like blocked that from my memory. That
Damn.
custom matches stress me out so bad, even when I'm not playing.
Oh, I've already begged to. I'm like, I have a team for EUIC, maybe two. Let me on that stage, please. Oh,
But
so
this is
bad.
like things like you two are like such a dynamic duo. Do you know what I mean? Like I freaking love watching you two cast together. You're so entertaining and so funny. So I
Oh,
feel like I have
thank
proper
you.
Joe Brown sized boots to try and like, you know, like to be able to provide Sierra the same support that you do. So hopefully I can do a good job.
Like I didn't
Wow.
steal you away from Lee, who's working the same event, but I'm casting with you. Like I actually like get him like watching me like, yo, she's still my duo. That's how I went down. But you know what I mean? Like,
Well, you know what's so funny though? Like Lee and I call each other like work wife, work husband, and then I call you wifey. So it's like it's quite funny.
oh my goodness. I'm so like nervous but excited for EUIC. Even like
It's your first
yes.
one, right? Like your first
Yes,
EUIC.
I've never been to EUIC before. I've never got picked up for casting, and I've always wanted to make the trip out to compete, but it always ends up being around a time where like I don't really have the most money, which is so tragic because EUIC always lands around my birthday. So I think there's one weekend it did land on my birthday. So it's just like,
Oh,
man, that sucks. So I'm really really excited to go. I still can't believe that I'm going. But I'm excited, and like I was pretty nervous for it too. But yesterday, Joe Brown, me, Lou, and the other casters, hosts, even Smeed, like we all like hopped into a call. We did like some practice. We were playing some Phasmophobia for like some
nice.
team bonding, and it was like
yeah.
I don't know. It was a really good vibe. Like it made like all the nervousness go away. And like I'm only full excited now.
Yeah. And we're gonna have a nice team dinner as well on Thursday and just like get hyped. Like that was one thing we did last year when it was Costa's first EUIC. They just kind of randomly happened. We wandered into a restaurant and ended up having like a really nice meal and some drinks and just kind of celebrating welcoming Costa to the team. And it just created such a nice team vibe that we were like so pumped for the next day. So I'm glad we're doing that again this year.
It's important. It's important. Like even like
Yeah.
LASC, because all three of us got to work that together. But like we even went to like Delayed Steakhouse like the one night, and everyone's going out and like we're all hanging and like I don't know, like being chill with each other and like being friends and having these fun times, these fun countries. Like that,
The best
I
part
I
of
don't
the
know,
job.
it makes it better.
That is
Yeah.
the best part. And don't forget to bring the mind. That was such a good game.
I don't worry. I'll be
Yeah.
bringing that, especially
Okay,
because
cool.
I mean, I was telling you this earlier. I anticipate there was always a rehearsal day. For
Yeah.
those listening, there's always a rehearsal day, but live production is a gong show. Like it's when I first got into like production, because I used to do a little bit of production before casting, I was told expect everything to go out wrong and be happy when it doesn't. And that basically just sums up production. Like every single rehearsal, there's always stuff being like that's wrong. Your time always gets pushed back, and it's not just Pokemon, it's every live broadcast I've worked on. Like so there's a lot of sitting around on these rehearsal days. So I'm gonna bring the mind, and then I'm excited for like that casting like practice game that we talked about too.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Like it'll be a good time. It'll be fun.
Yeah. It's also nice
Wait,
because like
Lou.
yeah.
Go ahead. No,
I was gonna say,
no,
the
go
costume
ahead.
days
I'll
are
ask
so
you a question
long,
after your point. Yeah,
and
go ahead.
you talk for so long that actually playing the mind, which is technically a silent game, is really nice.
Also that.
So yeah, we'll
It
be
does-
saying Joe.
yeah. I mean, the mind. I am a champion at the mind. You know, Sierra was there. It was a pretty iconic moment when we finished it off. But it was me, Sierra, and Luke, the TCG director, that we beat it. But we have a question. Somebody might have leaked to the OHKO Discord, and by somebody I mean me, that you were coming on, and people wanted to ask you certain questions. So we have one question before
Okay.
you head out and get ready for EUSC. It's coming from Fendi G
Cool.
in our OHKO Discord. He said, what is your most memorable time commentating? Like a real wild play, or a strong witty banter between casters, or even just a I can't believe I got to see this live moment. So what is your most memorable time commentating?
Do you know what? There's one that instantly springs to mind, and it was It was doing the London finals with Lee, because we'd worked together for so long, and being European, we don't get the same opportunities to work like NA events, for example. We're kind of limited where we're allowed to go. And so Worlds had always been this kind of out of insight but out of reach kind of thing, right? And then we finally got to do the World's finals together, and I'm just never going to forget, like, feeling like everything we had done and achieved and worked towards was all on this moment. And it was like, you know, don't mess this up kind of thing, but also like just go and give it all you've got. And nothing in my commentary career, I think, will ever touch that moment. Like the adrenaline, the emotion, the camaraderie between Lee and I as well. Like it was honestly a perfect moment. If that had been the last cast of my entire career, it would have been the most perfect way to end it, kind of thing, you know, like it was just phenomenal. But then the other, I suppose, like kind of funny moment that I always have to think back on, it was also with Lee, where I was doing some kind of analysis. We were in the middle of the game, and obviously when you're backstage, like not backstage, but behind the casting, like you have water, you might have a little snack or something.
I know this
basically, one. I was full on, like, we were really hyped in this match, and I was full on doing some analysis about like the position, and someone made like a crazy play. I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically I then asked Lee a direct question as the analyst, and I kind of said, I mean, what is he supposed to do here? And I turned around and looked at Lee, who had just like shoved a chocolate bar in his mouth or like some kind of snack. And basically he just burst out laughing, spat the chocolate everywhere. I get the giggles, and I then suddenly have to like carry on. And it was just the most ridiculous, funny moment. But that, I think, I was still quite a new commentator back then. So that kind of showed me that, like, it's okay if things go wrong. Like, you just roll with it. It taught me like so much about resilience. So those are two moments I will like always 100% remember. Yeah, like both of those. And I'd throw in one little cheeky third one, was interviewing Barish at Yokohama Worlds when he won his dream game. Getting to interview him and just have that lovely moment was really, really nice. Like for us as a couple, I really liked it.
So it's always funny because it's like when you get put on the spot to like pull up like a memorable moment, it's always like, okay, but there's also another one. Like I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Number one, it will always be that Worlds moment, because there's no words to describe how Lee and I felt. Like I remember even when we opened the show on that, it was like a Thursday, it was like a weird 4-day Worlds, and we opened on the Thursday, and that Claim Your Glory video had played.
Yeah.
And like we had never seen it before. Lee and I were like full on tearing up. We were really emotional. And then suddenly Anna was like, yeah, we'll kick it to the casters. And we were like, how are we supposed to, like, our voices were in our throat. Like, how are we supposed to open the show now without just sobbing? And that kind of feeling that, like, oh my God, we're here, we're going to give it all we've got, like, carried on the whole way through to that final. So, yeah, that was a very, very special moment.
Oh, that's awesome. That is also such a hype video, too. Like, that is
amazing.
That is a dang good video, but I believe, I'm looking at the clock, I believe we're losing you to the fates of Phasmophobia.
Yeah, my dinner has literally arrived. It's like 9 o'clock in Germany right now, so I need to have my dinner, and then yeah, like I've got another call scheduled with my best mate, but I need to eat. That's very important. A hangry Lou is not a happy Lou. But I know you guys are gonna talk a little bit more about like the next regulation dropping, so I will be very excited to be able to tune into the podcast and hear what you guys have to say about it, and about how my boy Groudon is back.
He do be back. But before we let you go, real fast, of course, have to say thank you so much for popping on, especially with how smart you are with all your notes and stuff. I mean, at this point, people have seen you on broadcast. I'm sure they know where to find you, but we still have to ask if people maybe don't know you or haven't seen too many EU broadcasts, where can they find you?
Like on socials and stuff like that? Yeah.
No, your address. I'm sorry.
Your house address.
I didn't know if I was supposed to be like, I'm in Frankfurt, Germany. Like, social on X. Yeah, Lulu the Pikachu is where you can find me on most things. I used to do a lot more kind of streaming stuff. I don't really do that anymore. It's really just, if you want to see cat pictures and random Pokemon art, you just follow me on X at Lulu the Pikachu.
Hey, yo. Perfect. Thanks again for coming on. Enjoy your dinner, okay?
I will.
We're down one Lou and one Gimli, but we still have so much more to be discussing for today. The Pokemon world actually did us a favor. Normally, they drop the news after we record for the podcast, and we had to record early this week because of me going to EUIC, and they said, all right, you know what, we'll throw you a bone this one time. Regulation G has been announced. It is along the lines of what people expected. We are going to be doing one restricted. For those a little bit newer, restricted are basically a good way to describe them is like box legendaries. That's kind of give or take, but that's essentially it. Pokemon that are like that one step higher. That's where you get your, you know, your Ho-Ohs, your Lugias, your Mewtwo's, etc. So it's definitely mixed reviews, but I want to know first off how you're feeling about this format.
So there's a lot of directions I can go with this conversation, Sierra.
Oh no.
I don't think many of those directions lead down positive roads. So unfortunately, I can try to spin it how much we want, and I will say the one positive.
Speak your truth. Speak
Right.
your truth. What do you feel?
The only positive I can come up with, which I've said for years, I've been doing commentary since the tail end of 2015. I really started my first season full on commentary at Locals was 2016. And I do think casting legendaries and restricted Pokemon is very fun and very enjoyable, regardless of how it compares to be a player playing against restricted Pokemon. So the one benefit for us is that the restricteds can make commentary more entertaining, especially with the weather battles with Kyogre and Groudon. That's pretty much the only positive I can come up with here, Sierra, because there are so many frustrations with this format. One being it's one restricted Pokemon, which obviously they might as well just be spoiling that the next format after it is two restricted Pokemon, right?
That was kind of obvious anyways, though, wasn't it?
No, but you could have just started on two, right? Like 2016, we didn't go from 1 to 2, we just had 2, right? 2019, we didn't go from 1 to 2, we had two restricteds in the GS Cup format.
But we still have another Worlds next year. What would we do if we did two this time?
This is exactly what I'm going to say. There are still like 200 Pokemon that are not in Scarlet and Violet, which is confusing because all of the, I think all the Pokemon became accessible through home except for like the Unova monkeys and Emboar or something like that in Scarlet and Violet through either Pokemon Go or Pokemon Home, bringing it up through the 3DS. So you have the technology to bring those other Pokemon into the format or into Scarlet and Violet. And so we never really got a true, quote unquote, national Dex format because we don't have every non-restricted Pokemon available. And I understand it's not a lot, but it is not. I looked through those roughly 200 Pokemon and I listed some. So it's going to start off slow, as these Pokemon are somewhat viable, probably would not actually have an impact, and it's going to pick up by the end. These are Pokemon that we have never had the opportunity.
You're not
to
listing all
with
200, are you?
No. It's like 10.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
That's why I looked through beforehand. I didn't want to do it live now. It's like
okay.
Yeah. So these are Pokemon we never got to interact with terrestrialization. We never got to see how they would impact metagame. Some of them are pretty big staples in VGC. So it starts off slow, gets up more significant. It's going through Nidoqueen and Nidoking, Machamp, Alakazam, Aerodactyl. That's like Gen 1, whatever. It might have some niche, whatever. Crobat has very typically been good in restricted formats. Togekiss is a Pokemon we never got to use, was great in multiple formats. Gigalith, Jellicent, Ferrothorn is a gigantic Pokemon we never had the chance. Aegislash with terrestrialization, who would have known? And then here's the big ones. Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde, not in the game, so we don't even have a full restricted list on this end. The Tapu Pokemon and all of the Ultra Beasts are not in the game. Those are significant Pokemon that affect metagames when they're involved. And then, of course, you got the Dracovish in the end, because Dracovish, if you put him in the rain, put him next to Tornadus, maybe Dracovish could have had a little bit of fun. But like, these are Pokemon that especially the Tapus and the Ultra Beasts, and obviously Xerneas, Yveltal, Zygarde, are absolutely meta-warping Pokemon that we never got the chance to play in Scarlet and Violet. So why wasn't this format national decks? Why wasn't, here's the rest of the Pokemon that are currently that are not in the game. We're going to make them accessible through home. And then the third year of the cycle of Scarlet and Violet, which is what we always do. The third year is the GS Cup year. Why are we capstoning the second year without a national dex format and starting it with one restricted? That's what I don't understand.
I mean, it's a very simple answer that we have too many Pokemon that they're not including all of them in the game. It's not new. They did the same with Sword and Shield. They announced that they weren't doing all the Pokemon. That's why there's all the hashtag bring back national decks. No, that they never brought all the Pokemon to Sword and Shield. They were still missing like 150, 200. There's a lot of Pokemon that were missing after the DLCs. They brought a bunch with the DLCs, but they never brought all of them, and they never they never brought them home all in afterwards via any home compatibility. So they were very much so, we are not including every single Pokemon in our games anymore. That's why there's the hashtag Dexit, hashtag bring back national decks, all of that. So I'm not surprised whatsoever they're not doing that for Scarlet and Violet. I would have been more surprised than anything because it would be them backtracking on what they said. I believe looking up a Quick Game Rant article that lists all of the Pokemon, it was 231 Pokemon missing after the Crown Tundra DLC. I think we rotated format so often, and with the fact that it was COVID and then things were all kind of weird, that maybe in VGC, like the absence wasn't quite as noted as in a, wait, where does the format go? Why don't we bring all these back? As maybe it is kind of like brought up now since we are already having one restricted format. So that's kind of the conversation. But I never would have expected them to be bringing back the other Pokemon. I'd be more surprised than anything. I think with the timeline cycle, I think I would have liked to see Worlds at Regulation F. My personal opinion. I would have liked to see this format be fleshed out a little bit longer. I would have liked every format, and not necessarily that this had to go on for 8 months, but more so every other format leading up to this lasted a month or two longer, and then have this format be 5-6 months going up to Worlds, then maybe dive into one restricted after. I do think from a marketing and oh my god standpoint, they kind of want the flashier thing for Worlds, and realistically, a one restricted is flashier than no restricted. It's kind of like last year. The bringing in the home Pokemon was flashier than not doing it, even if it was something that I didn't necessarily agree with. So I'm not surprised by the choice. I think realistically 2 restricted was always going to be how it would be next year. So I don't think that's spoiled. But there's going to be
something else next year too, right? Because we're going to continue rotating. They're not going to say September 1st through August 31st, 2025 will be GS Cup. So like to me, the frustrating part with Regulation D and then now with Regulation G is that Worlds is the capstone of the year, and the World Championship format is a transitionary format. We got Regulation D was a transition. It was not the capstone of that year of the metagame that was played. You're transitioning to a whole new world with the DLCs and these other Pokemon, and only selective sub-legendary Pokemon coming back. And then now this is a transitionary format into a capstone, which would be a 2 legendary format. So like it just doesn't. Like, I understand the marketing of, hey, here, come watch the World Championship with Pokemon Home introduction, and come watch the World Championship with one restricted Pokemon on the end. But like, it doesn't feel like you're sending off a year, or you're like finishing it at its peak. It's like it's almost at its lowest point. You're like restarting a new format from scratch, and then you're building up for the next 3 regulations to another spot. So like, just because 2 restricted is coming, that doesn't mean that all of next year is going to be 2 restricted. They're going to have to come up with other formats as well.
I want to go back to like what you're saying, like it's like transition thing into Worlds is a transition. Like the format starts May 1st, and this is going to be Worlds format. So we have Indy, LA, NAIC, multiple. We have a Puerto Rican special event. There's a Sao Paulo regionals, I believe. There's still a bunch of like EU events. There's a lot of events still. So I think more than anything, like we're gonna have 2 months, like of events, or like a month and a half, because June kind of stops. So it's like a little weird, but I don't really equate it to the same as last year, to where NAIC was one format and then they cut it. And then Worlds was the start of a brand new format. Like, this is the Worlds format. We will have time to build upon this. We will have time to kind of have it for some events and kind of see where things are. So it might not be the end stone that people wanted, but I don't think it's as drastic as last year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's nice that you have 2 more months of actual data and you're not going in blind, but I'm not talking about lack of events like last year. I'm talking about the type of format that it is. Clearly Regulation D built up to the 2 DLCs, and this is the culmination of that buildup. And so what I'm saying is that Regulation G is starting a new build up to the climax of what would have traditionally been GS Cup 2 restricteds, but it's starting it at what should be the end of the prior. So, like, you know, I don't know how to explain it, like a story, like a WrestleMania storyline that you build up the whole year. It's like you have that story finish at the Royal Rumble instead of at WrestleMania. Like, it just doesn't, like, you have to finish the narrative. I know it's a tough analogy, but like, it just frustrates me, because like we so easily could have not had this format.
See, I think because the regulations are so short that I don't quite see it the same way. If the regulations were a little bit longer, like each regulation was 6 months minimum, then I could definitely be a little bit more on board with that you're kind of going away from quintessential Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you're bringing in these restricted, etc. But since we have been more so in the business of switching things up pretty fast, Regulation F is the longest standing regulation we've had since Scarlet and Violet's come out. Every other one has been only 3 months. I'm not really necessarily like, oh, this is quintessential VGC, this is quintessential Scarlet and Violet, because we're constantly changing it. So I understand where you're coming from, to where you would want like what's currently built upon to kind of be like the ending, and then maybe start next season with a restricted. Since we are in a constant state of change, like I just don't view it the same way. I think I would have preferred to end it with Reg F, like I said, but since we do have it a little earlier than just right up at Worlds like last year, I'm a little bit more okay with it. So I don't know how I feel about it as a format itself, but
like, to me, this like maybe a better analogy, more Pokemon related analogy, is like this is like if the 2018 World Championship was played in the 2019 Sun format. Like, that's how it feels right now. Like, you're playing in the next format instead of capping off what this format was. And I agree with you. Regulation F would have been fine. You know, maybe 8 months, people get a little dragged on about it, but like, if they're not adding every Pokemon, like, Jesus, bring us the Tapus, like, bring like significant, like something. You can't add 4 Pokemon that would absolutely, every person you talk about, oh my god, imagine Coco and Iron Bundle, or imagine Tapu Lele and whatever size span. Like, even just adding 4 Pokemon would drastically, you know, alter the meta. Like, people are crying for Tapu Fini to be a viable Pokemon. So if Regulation G was just Regulation F and the 4 Tapus, like, I don't think people would be complaining.
I don't disagree, but I also don't necessarily think that's the most related, because like I think that's just kind of like a okay, and like it could have been like, oh well, this could be a completely different format if you just didn't want to add the Treasures of Ruin. This could have been completely different. Add this, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's like, since we have the information of what's coming up, since those Pokemon are not included in the game, it's the same conversation. People talking about, oh well, Xerneas, that will be a broken Pokemon come restricted, and they never added it, right? So it's like, you can theory about it all you want, but it's not in the game unless they change something for next year. It's not going to be in the game. So it's kind of like, move on with your life. This is the regulation we got, whether you like it or not.
But okay, so what about that analogy though, of like 2018 Worlds was instead the Sun? Like, how does that analogy play to you? Because that's how it feels to me right now.
I don't remember back, but like
No, I'm saying 2018 was its own, right? 2018 was its own format. You had Mega Evolution, Z moves, and it was a national dex format. Wasn't 2018
a year-long format though?
Right. So what? Right. That's how. What I am saying is how this feels is 2018. We had the whole format build up, and then in May we would have done what Sun format was the following year. I'm saying that's how this feels to me right now. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay, and I'm just saying, like, this hasn't been a year-long format. So, I just feel differently about it than you do, because Reg F has been 3 months. We're on month 4 now. Reg E was 3, Reg D was 3, Reg C was 3. So I just, I don't see it as a big buildup, because we've constantly been changing. When we look back at the past regulations, different Pokemon have dipped in and out. I mean, Reg C changed so much even just then. And then we're talking about Reg E when we added Urshifus, and that changed everything. So we've already gone through so many changes that I don't feel as strongly about it. I don't feel the same way as you do talking about the 2018. If we had Reg F the entire time, that's a different story. So it's just we view it just in different ways. I understand where you're coming from, but I just don't have the same sentiment about it. But I think that's one of those a typical Joe Brown, Sierra Dawn agree to disagree moments. I don't think either of us is invalid in what we're saying. I think we just feel differently about it, which is definitely kind of the capstone of how people are feeling about this format so far, because it's definitely had a lot of mixed reviews, though I do think that it trends a little bit more on the negative side of things.
Yeah, I don't know many people that like one restricted formats. I think we have, replies that we can see to our tweet about people and their feelings on this format. But most people find, even if double restricted, if the quintessential GS Cup format is more restrictive, for lack of a better word, because those Pokemon are so overwhelmingly strong, at least you have 2 and they counterbalance each other. So you had Xerneas and Groudon together, where it wasn't just a Groudon team or just a Xerneas team or just a Zacian team or just a Kyogre team. You were able to cover your other legendaries' weaknesses with your second restricted slot. So I don't remember people enjoying, what was that, Series 10 in Sword and Shield as much as Series 12, where you just had the one restricted Pokemon, which just meant you had Zacian and 5 other Pokemon. So I don't. It's just a bizarre choice in my head.
Yeah, the one restricted aspect of it, I definitely think is the worst part of it. So a couple of tweets referencing that. Gio, who actually just very recently had on the podcast, tweeted out, the only reason I'm opposed to single restricted is becomes a bit of a rock, paper, scissors game. With 2 restricted, one can cover for the other's weakness. Ends it off with, but we'll see. Could be fun. I think describing the rock, paper, scissors, I think is actually puts it perfectly. And I think too, where that becomes a really, really big thing is exactly what you were saying. If you have 2, one can cover for a weakness. So you can actually get some kind of more interesting combinations. I mean, I even remember Joe at Joe Ugarte at London Worlds 2022 with Yveltal Lunala, which wasn't necessarily the most paired Pokemon, normally kind of with other things, and neither were necessarily the most used restricted either. Right. But pairing them together, you could kind of cover for weaknesses and etc. Whereas with one, it kind of goes into I think they'll have be a top 3, and if you're not using one of those top 3, you're kind of just at a disadvantage, which I think it's really centralizing for team building in that aspect.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think I've gotten into, I don't know if you've been there for these conversations or not, Sierra, but I've talked to other casters, we're out to dinner talking about future formats. And it's all right, this whole game that we play is marketing, right? They spend all this money it's look at this competitive game. Look at how cool Golden Go is. Go buy Scarlet and Violet and you can play with Golden Go, right? So I understand at a base level, we only exist to market the Pokemon games. And so the World Championships and the rotating formats are all marketing of the new things. Like we said, the first Series 2 in Sword and Shield was to market that Pokemon Home had made it to Sword and Shield. And then we had Regulation D was to show that Pokemon Home, they're marketing. So I adamantly fought other casters on this thought, but even if the format sucks, even the just Miraidon Koraidon format, which I think was it was a random weekend once in Scarlet and Violet, they had a tour that was you could use either Miraidon or Koraidon even if metagame wise that format sucks, that's it's so divisive and blah blah blah. Doesn't that make more sense marketing wise for the second year of the cycle to do? By the way, the box arts, Miraidon and Koraidon, are legal for the first time in VGC. Have one of them on your team. They beat each other because they're both dragon types. They have two different archetypes because one sets up the Quark Drive, one sets up the Protosynthesis. Like, marketing wise, I think that is more easy to market than you can have one restricted, and sometimes it'll be Miraidon, but other times it could be Groudon. But then, like, it could also be Mewtwo if you want to troll. Like, I just think that's worse marketing than here's Miraidon or Koraidon. They're your team captain, and you have 5 other slots to fill.
I would hate it if they were like, all right, well, we're only adding 2 new Pokemon to the new format, but they're so strong that you need one of them. I think that's going to be worse for the team building because of the fact that you either have the electric terrain set, so you could use, the electric Pokemon, or you have the sun setter, so you use your sun Pokemon. And beyond that, like, how are you going to operate a rain team when you have these strong sun Pokemon? How are you going to do all of, like, this other stuff? Like, I think realistically, them wanting to add Miraidon and Koraidon, I think it only makes sense to add a restricted slot and just have it be general in that case, because I think that would actually be the most miserable format of all. There's already worries about things being too centralizing with allowing all of the restricted. So only adding 2, I think, just makes that issue worse. I understand, like, from a marketing aspect, but I think this is kind of like the
format plays. I'm talking about marketing.
But I think this is like the compromise between that being like, okay, we want the Miraidon and Koraidon in the game, but we can't just do that. So we'll allow all the restricteds. So that's just kind of how I look at it in that case. Because then you're still getting, like, the marketing thing, but realistically what's bad for marketing is if the game is so absolutely, like, boring to watch that nobody wants to watch it. There's already complaints that people only use the same Pokemon and people don't step out and, like, creatively make teams, so it doesn't help them in the marketing if they make their own game worse.
And, like, what does this say for next year, right? Because this format ends August 31st, so obviously we'll start regionals up again in September next year, and Regulation H is going to be something else. Are we going to have, because you got to have, essentially, if every regulation's 3-ish months long, you're going to have 4 regulations per year. So we're starting the new year, we're ending the new year on what should have been the start of next year. Are we going to have a 1 restricted, no Terra? Or are we going to have we're going to go from 1 to then 2 restricted to then 2 restricted, no Terra, to then end the year on 2 restricted with Terra? Like, are we going to decrease Pokemon that are available? We're going to get rid of restricted for 3 months and then bring them back? Like, I think this makes even next year even more confusing.
I like how you threw in there too that, like, oh, we're ending the format where we should have started it. Like, I'm going to agree with that when I disagree with it. But I do think it's interesting, like, to think of where things can be taken from there. I think that maybe next year, out of anything, we might see 2 6-month-long formats. I don't know what they would do for the first one, the second one being GS Cup. I don't think that they would do GS Cup for the entire year, but I'd be intrigued to see exactly what they do, though I don't really have any thoughts on how they could do it. They could also, as much as I would dislike this, they could also pull a Sword and Shield at the later parts where they're just kept being like, oh shoot, we need to save GS format for Worlds. We can't do it yet. What do we do now? We'll revert back to an older format. They could just take the restricteds away. I actually think that's the worst option of all, because I think it should be a progression and a build.
Right.
I'm okay with where they're building it for Worlds. If you drop off and afterwards revert back, I think that's going to be the most harmful. But I think it's kind of too early to speculate. We're already speculating next format, and we haven't even gotten to this one. Joe Brown, we got, like, so many replies to the current Reg G news. Let's talk about Reg G and all of this stuff, all right?
Well, Walking Lake will be better, because now its Sun teammate isn't going to be 75 speed points slower than it.
Oh, we need to talk about the speeds of some Pokemon, because James Evans tweeted out, and this is a really valid point. Koraidon, Miraidon, Chien, Pau, and Fluttermane are all speed tied.
Yep, and Iron Bundle's 136. So
it's just bundle everywhere. No, I think it's like such a crazy thing from game design that like all those Pokemon are at the same speed. Like that is crazy. And
because
like
they were all introduced the same generation, Sierra. That's the point. That's what's crazy about it. It's not like they accidentally, in Gen 9 made another Pokemon with 102 speed and they're like, oh crap, that happens to have the same speed as Garchomp. And now, who knows how this is going to interact. They introduced 4 Pokemon at the same time at 135. Why couldn't one of them have been 131, 132, 133, 134, 135, 136? Like, at least Miraidon and Koraidon speed tying makes sense because a lot of the times legendaries keep the same base stats and, swap them around to different categories. But, like, Fluttermane was, we need to have all 55s and all 135s. And it's like, no, you don't need to have that, but that's the choice you did. Oh, Chien-Pao has to have 135 speed. No, it didn't need. It could have had 133. It has Sucker Punch, right? It didn't need to speed tie the legendaries.
Yeah, I definitely, just because it's all the same generation, it's definitely very like, really? And I think that kills off choice specs Flutter, because at this point, if you're running Flutter, it has to be booster speed.
Yeah.
At this point, and it'll be interesting, even like for your own team building too, because I mean, I don't know which one is the most common right now. I'd have to relook, but like Chien-Pao, for example, I know that I swapped to plus speed as opposed to plus attack, just because I didn't want to be outsped by other Chien-Paos. Right. But speed tying on your own team of things is also detrimental. So you now have to be making decisions on which one you want to be the faster one, which then means that you could be outsped. You might do your Chien-Pao 1 point slower. So your Koraidon and Miraidon is then maxed. But then all of a sudden, if somebody else has their Chien-Pao maxed, because they're crazy or they're running a different restricted and they don't have to worry about that speed tie with the Koraidon or Miraidon, well, then you're at a disadvantage there, too. So I think that there's a lot of interesting points of that.
Also, specs might still be alive because you could just do the speed boosting by having Koraidon or Groudon on the team with Fluttermane. So you can still do specs and get your speed boosts out of it.
That's true. That's true. You just have to make sure that you are more speed as opposed to special attack in terms of, but if you have the choice specs, then that's like a fine like compromise. My current Sun one, I have my choice specs and the special attack boost. I'm like, you know what, if I get an attack off, you gonna die. But yeah, it should be interesting. I think the biggest worry though, when you're talking about fast Pokemon going into this new regulation, and this is the one that I've seen blow Twitter up, is the Calyrex Shadow Rider.
Ooh.
Which that I am not gonna lie, this is actually what I think I'd be most worried about too in the new coming format, because for one restricted, I mean Astro Barrage is insanely nutty. Even just like a single target attacks, super nutty. Its special attack is insane. Like this can do damage.
Dude, Wide Guard's gonna be mandatory on a team.
Yeah.
Like, you know how you used to have a safety goggles or a Terra Grass just because of Mungus existed? You are going to have a Wide Guard on your team to stop Calyrex expanding force.
No, 100%. Like, size spam users are like, hallelujah right about now. They stuck through trying times, and they are about to get their reward. And yeah, that Wide Guard thing, that's so true. And I think that's where it goes back to centralizing team building, because all of a sudden you have to make sure you're not going to get bodied by this Calyrex. You need this Wide Guard. Wide Guard isn't on every single Pokemon. So now all of a sudden you need to have a Pokemon that, even if you're like, that's the worst 50-50. Do I want to lead my trash Wide Guard Pokemon? Or do I have it in the back? Because if you lead it and they don't lead the Calyrex and they bop it, you're about to get swept by Calyrex. Oh, well, you have it in the back and they lead a Calyrex. Well, you're also just bopped right there on the spot. Like, I don't think that's going to create very fun gameplay from that.
Oh, by the way, speaking of Calyrex, if you started playing competitive Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, well, good luck, because now you have to go buy Sword and Shield and go buy the Sword and Shield DLC and go play through the Crown Tundra and get your Calyrex form and bring it up there. So, like, you could, I always harp on it on the lack of Pokemon, like, that same format that had the Tapus aren't allowed to come through, but you could go play Sword and Shield and go get Calyrex to do it, because they talk about inaccessibility of this format. How's little Timmy from Ohio going to watch the stream, in Honolulu this year, be like, man, this is so cool. I want to play Calyrex. And then has to try to explain to his mom and dad, oh, okay, actually you need to buy a 4-year-old game and then need to buy both versions of the DLC and then let me play through it and then pay for Pokemon Home and then let me bring that in and then I can play with Calyrex.
Yeah, which there's definitely been a lot of talk about that as well. There's like some people that commented on well, but I'm having trouble finding it offhand. But the concern about how accessible the Pokemon are definitely super, super valid going on in this, because I can't tell anyone in good conscience to go buy a 4-year-old game and play through and get the double DLC, you know? Like, I can't realistically say that. But that also means that if Calyrex Shadow Rider is the best Pokemon in format,
Yep.
you now don't have the best Pokemon in format. And that's an issue that we've had with VGC for a while, too. Even with something like Ogerpon, that was introduced in Teal Mask. You had to buy a DLC for that. And if you didn't, you were just done. And those are one-and-done Pokemon, too. So you can't be trading a friend for them. The Paradoxes,
Right.
the Gouging Fire, the Raging Bolt, the same thing. So I think that's a really, really good, like, this is super, super valid concern coming out here, and I actually feel really, really bad for people that are getting into the game later. I think with, like, the legendaries that are not restricted, it was a little easier, because, like, Pokemon Go, people will have extras. Like, you can find those a little bit easier. Like, and there is even some restricted, though unfortunately they're not in Scarlet and Violet, that some people might have a bunch of on Pokemon Go. I have, like, 20 shiny Yveltals on Pokemon Go. I don't know why. I decided that I wanted every single shiny Yveltal I could get, and
day.
I spent a lot of money. I am the cash cow, but I have a lot of Yveltals, for example. So if someone needed an Yveltal, I could give them an Yveltal, you know? But something like the Calyrex Shadow Rider isn't in Pokemon Go. It's not in any of the other games. You can't catch it in this current game, so you have to, no matter what, go back to Sword and Shield, which is, I think, a big issue when you're creating these formats.
Yeah, I agree. It's really frustrating when you're trying to grow the game and trying to get other people involved. Like, somebody watches Worlds, for like, imagine me, or imagine all the other Pachirisu truthers out there, right? That was your first experience, and it's like, oh, by the way, you have to go play a mini game in Diamond and Pearl to get Pachirisu. Like, imagine if that's what it was, right? Like, it's just like, oh, okay, well then I guess I'll just never start playing then if the entry, you know, the barrier to entry is so massive that I think there will be people that would rather just not play than go through all the nonsense of buying Sword and Shield and the DLCs and everything.
And, like, some people are so new. I found, like, one of the comments, this one coming out from Curly Bird, talking new to VGC, started playing ranked this past month. You're
Right.
already strapped for resources at that point. Found a place locally, does mid-season premier challenges, coming from shiny hunting, and, like, I'm dreading resetting for legendaries. And then they finish it off. I'm excited. Groudon's my favorite, excited to use him. So, like, their excitement is bringing them through what is about to be a not so fun part of the game of not only getting these restricted Pokemon, but, like, also, if you're looking at, again, the top competitive, resetting for something that is going to be top competitive. Like, that is a big barrier to get around. We talk about getting into the game being easier than ever, and a lot of parts are, but they're really kind of taking a step back with that.
Well, and at the same time, that same person that's just starting now and they can't get Calyrex, they also can't get Urshifu, right? It's the same issue with the DLC.
They have Urshifu in Scarlet and Violet. You hater.
I thought you had to bring it up. I brought mine up from Sword and Shield.
No, they included it in. You need the DLC, so it isn't quite, you know. Oh my gosh, but you know those barbecues I kept telling you to do. If you do enough barbecues, you get the locations for different legendaries in the game.
And Cubfu is one of them?
Yeah.
I
caught mine in Cubfu.
Because you don't have the towers. How did you evolve it?
You get the scroll from the auctions.
Now, I do remember we talked about the Latios issues and Raging Bolt and Gouging Fire, and you did say, just bring it from Go, bro. I have 20 Latios. I saw comments that said if you don't have the Pokemon registered, you can't bring it in from Go.
I don't know. I brought, like, 5 Landorus from Go onto VGC. I don't remember if I had to get somebody to like touch trade it to me, but and like I don't recall doing so. But yeah, I brought like 5 Landorus up because it was right before Worlds and everyone was like, anyone got a Landorus I can borrow? So I had to bring a bunch up. One of them is perma-named Matt because I lent them out to somebody and they renamed it and I gave it back and go. But like it's still like it is still a way. It's not as easy as like being able to catch it in the game, but I do think just like a touch trade is not necessarily too difficult. If like that is a barrier.
You gotta have friends. You know, that's my biggest hurdle, you know, having friends.
And that's why there's the Discord. So if you don't have friends, you can go there to make friends or to at least find people that can be touch trading those types of Pokemon for you or try and help you.
I do see
out
2
in that sort of regard.
positive comments here, like kind of back to back. One from Seabad, where Shasta Seabad says, "If you just see novice, I like it. Helps narrow down a team captain from a very long list of candidates," which that's what Gio talked about. That's what we were talking about. You essentially start from scratch, like the old days. You used to start with your Mega Evolution and figure out 5 Pokemon from there. And then the other one from Happy Fan P, along the same lines. "I've always loved team building and theory crafting more than battling. For restricted formats, my fun grows a ton. Having what is essentially a king piece to select first creates a lot of opportunities to make unique teams based on those strengths, more archetypes to explore."
I think it'll be interesting to see, because offhand, what I'm thinking, like we talked about earlier, just having the Koraidon and Miraidon, I think is very limiting. I think depending on how the team building goes, that we could potentially find ourselves in a interesting but cool position that, sure, maybe it is a little centralizing in a team to build around your one piece, but a few different ways to be kind of building that out that could actually match pretty well into each other. Because having repeating Pokemon or similar type of ideas doesn't necessarily lend to a bad format. If I know people will talk fondly about Chalk, and Chalk, there was still variety within the teams, and people would still talk about it being a fun format. And I think even with the legendaries, like the restricted, that there is going to be a couple of them that you can't get too kind of crazy with, but maybe a couple of others you can actually have like, okay, well, maybe a couple of the Pokemon will be the same, but then you have different ways to support it. So I definitely think that there's interest in that way, that like it'll depend on what teams come out. I haven't really looked too far into Reg G, of course, with EUIC around the corner. That's where my focus is gone. So I can't really say too confidently right now, but I definitely think that there is the possibility that it could be pretty okay.
Yeah, I haven't started, testing anything. I've just seen, people are tweeting out team composition stuff. So like someone pointed out a clear amulet Groudon team with Swords Dance next to Scovillain with Chlorophyll to, put things to sleep, and you click Swords Dance, can't be intimidated, right? Just some interesting things like that. But like, yeah, for sure, there will be many times you and I will be on broadcast, Sierra, and we're not going to know what's going to happen because Miraidon, Koraidon, Qianpao, and Floodamane are all on the field in some way at the same point. Like, let's say Alex Underhill's got Miraidon, and then James Beck has Koraidon, and they're both there, but Qianpao's also on one side. Is he going to sucker punch because he thinks he's going to lose the speed tie? Like, it's really, really toxic that they all have the same speed tier.
Didn't we really talk about speed tiers? I want to talk about the differences with the team. That Scovillain, like Groudon thing you were talking about? Why Scovillain when you're talking about a chlorophyll
that's
Pokemon?
What they tweeted. That's what somebody tweeted. I don't know. I just saw it in passing.
Jumpluff. You put stuff to sleep. You have Encore. Oh my god, Jumpluff is so good. I love Encore so much. But one thing that is quite interesting is like, when people are excited about the new format, because I definitely think for Reg G, it's a little far and few between here. Lake Falls, I'm talking, surely this format will finally save Regieleki. I respect always the Regieleki stuff. But then says after, I'm excited, but I have nothing to base it off of someone who just like started VGC and started the Violet. I just want to use my favorite legendaries, Zacian, Lunala, Calyrex, and like Koraidon. And I think that's something interesting as well. Like a lot of the people that I think that have been like Doom posting the most have been people that have been around for a little bit. So of course they've played these restricted formats before. The Pokemon around it will be a little different. And we always hate the new thing. We're the Pokemon community. We always hate the new thing around the corner. But this is also an opportunity for those who can get the Pokemon. But hey, maybe this would actually be fun for them because they haven't actually gotten this yet, right?
Yeah, I guess like the innocence of seeing the world through a new player who hasn't experienced the restricted formats before. It's like, oh, look at these old curmudgeons that have played through Zerndon days and, you know, Zacian Ogre stuff in 2022. They're just upset at how things used to be. And then you have, oh, the world is so bright and colorful, and I can use my favorite Reg legendary. I can use Giratina. Oh, it's going to be so exciting. All right, good luck. If your one restricted is Giratina, good luck against Miraidon, Koraidon, Kyogre, Groudon, Calyrex, you know. Like, that's why, like, you know, it was like, oh, the just Miraidon Koraidon format would be so trash, like, because it's so limiting. I still think this format is trash because I think it's also limiting, because if you're using Mewtwo, you're trying hard. If you're using Dialga as your one restricted compared to Zacian or Kyogre or Groudon, like, you're trying really hard. Not all the restricteds are built on the same plane. That's why the 2 spots was so helpful. But here's some person that's truly in a desperate position, Sierra. From Show, one of our replies. I'm absolutely horrified. Crying emoji. I fear my goat, Okidogi, will not be making my next team, unfortunately. Though the huge buff with an actual electric terrain setter definitely interests me, future Paradox Pokemon just got a huge buff. So Okidogi down, but future Paradox Pokemon up.
There definitely is, like, future Paradox Pokemon up. And you know what, like, as a Slithering main, like, I respect it. Maybe you can find a way for your goat Okidogi somehow. But, like, what I think is interesting is, so far in the format, we actually haven't necessarily seen the activation of the Paradox abilities too often, right, except for by Booster Energy. Even though they're all the past Paradox Pokemon, which are some of the strongest ones that we have, are activated by Sun, there actually isn't an overuse of Sun, because the only good Sun setter is Torkoal, or like manually setting it, and it's just like not necessarily the greatest thing. So the past Paradoxes have been able to thrive, and even some of the future ones as well, even despite the fact they haven't necessarily had the conditions in which are allowing them to thrive. So I definitely think that the future Paradoxes will get a bit of a buff, but I actually don't know if it'll be so substantial in the end. Maybe I'm overlooking. I do think the Electric Terrain Iron Bundle combo is definitely the biggest one I'm looking at, more so for the Icy Wind speed control aspect of it. And if you catch someone off guard with a bad lead, freeze dry them, you're cooked, you're done. But beyond that, I don't actually think it's going to be the biggest buff overall, because if just activating their abilities was enough to break them, well, Sun should have won more than 2 events over the past 2 years.
Right, and I think on the future Paradox specifically, because like even James mentioned it last week, he's like, oh my god, Coco Bundle would be like a dream come true if I could have them together. And like throughout the first year of Scouting about it, I feel like some of the most common what ifs, we were talking about future formats and future Pokemon, you know, coming in, some of the 2 most common was, what if Iron Bundle actually had a held item instead of having to run Booster Energy? You have Life Orb, or, you know, what if Focus Sash, whatever you wanted. And what if Iron Hands actually had an ability because it was running Assault Vest, or, you know, whatever it wanted every time. So these are essentially 2 abilityless, itemless Pokemon. At least Iron Hands had the AV helping it out. But like, you know, I don't even know if Iron Hands is going to be that good, because you have to run Miraidon, right? You can't run Pincurchin. He stinks. Tapu doesn't exist. So no matter what, you're doubling up on electric types in a format that Groudon is being introduced into. So, you know, it's kind of scary to put Iron Hands and Miraidon into the same team. Obviously, you do have terrestrialization and stuff, but if you terrestrialize your Iron Hands, then now your Miraidon's still weak to Dragon and Fairy from the Koraidon on the other end. So, it should be interesting.
Even with Iron Hands, weak to Ground, Psychic, Fairy.
Yeah, he's having a tough go.
There's no saving that. Like, there's just like you're like, you could survive before because you had your Assault Vest, and like I get it. There's Terra, but like realistically, like, I don't think Iron Hands is good enough to justify it. And if it was already good enough to justify it, well, then we would have seen more of it. And it's like, okay, an ability is cool, but you're still slow. All right, like, having an attack boost is cool. You're still going to get bodied before you even get to act to attack, right? So I just think that's going to be tough.
Like, what really helps the past Paradox Pokemon is that Koraidon is not a fire type, and it is not the same type as the other past Paradoxes. And what hurts the future Paradoxes is that electric terrain is tied to electric types in Miraidon, Tapu Koko, and Pincurchin, so something like Iron Hands is really hurt. But Fluttermane doesn't care what typing Koraidon is. Roaring Moon doesn't care what typing it is. Like, you could have a strong fire super like Walking Wake now. Walking Wake doesn't care about Koraidon's type because you're still expanding your type chart there. You can have some other fire abuser with, you know, Eruption or like some really strong Flare Blitz in the sun because Koraidon is dragon and fighting, right? So it's not like you're doubling up on the types. Or if you had Torkoal and Armarouge, or Torkoal and Heat Drain, or Torkoal and Terrifier Slitherwing, like you're doubling up on that typing.
I'm just like, man, I'm not excited.
I think Roaring Moon will be good.
For the new rig.
You just go, you don't need the booster energy anymore, right? So you can actually have a held item. You have Koraidon and Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon's super fast, speed booster, Tailwind. Now your Koraidon's outspeeding all the other 135s. Like, I think Roaring Moon might be pretty solid in this.
I don't know. I'm not the greatest at, like, seeing too far in advance with things, but it'll definitely be interesting. And I think it's the biggest thing is, like, I personally have to wait until, like, we get into that format to actually make a decision. Like, I actually, like, as much as I'm like, maybe not, like, I can actually see it being a pretty good format. And it's interesting because, like, even some top players are kind of more so divided on it. I got to see a lot of hate coming out. Justin Tang commented, I just passed it too. Oh no. Tang, where'd you go?
He also
he's going to enjoy the first month, dreading the rest.
He also tweeted about the Chi-Yu Calyrex combination, which, good luck.
Yeah. Good luck, have fun. Make sure you have Wild Guard. I know Joseph Agarte did the typical, like, yo, y'all, it's gonna be fun. People are like, yo, I think
Pokemon? Ooh.
I think Joe tweeted out, like, right away, like, oh yeah, this format should be fun. And then Karis was like, how do you somehow always have the worst takes? Which I thought was, like, hilarious. But, like, it's definitely interesting, like, the different kind of responses to it and, like, how much some people are dreading this and how, like, excited, like, others are for it.
Yeah.
What's that one Pokemon you're gonna try and, like, build though? Like that one Trashmon.
Does it have to be a restricted or something in general?
I mean, as long as you say the restricted that you're gonna pair it with. If you have a different Pokemon that you're like, oh, maybe I can use it now that this restricted's out, then, you know.
I mean, like, I'm trying to think of those lesser used photosynthesis Pokemon like Great Tusk and Brute Bonnet, and I'm wondering I'm wondering how Koraidon can help them. I do think, like, Miraidon and Raging Bolt are both Electric Dragon, right? So that's going to be a scary face-off. Like, there's probably going to be a lot of Terra Fairies going around just to stop these Dragon type moves. I don't know. I guess. Let me look at the restricted list, see if there's anybody that's not, like, the huge ones. Like, I do want to see how Zacian plays out now, because it's still, even with the nerfs, it's still faster than Fluttermane.
It's true. One Pokemon that we didn't really talk about was Terrapagos. Will actually be on the list. However, it said that is on the list of
the Galapagos Islands. Terrapagos.
I think
What does
it's
he even do?
Terrapagos.
No, it's the Galapagos. You know what? It's that we don't have time for this today. Okay, what does it even do? Terra Shift. When the Pokemon enters a battle, it absorbs the energy around itself and transforms into terrestrial form. So it's just like inherently stellar Terra. Is that how that works? Or no? Am I dumb?
My understanding, and you have like the
You get a 20%
Terra
boost.
that's like that like hits everything.
Yeah. And then it has Terra Shell after its terrestrial form. Pokemon Shell contains the power of each type. All damage-dealing moves that hit the Pokemon when its HP is full will not be very effective. So it'll be resisted if he's at full HP. So even when you're going to go tanky, like, leftover or something like that. And then Terraform Zero. When Terrapagos changes into its stellar form, it uses its hidden powers to eliminate all effects of weather and terrain, reducing them to 0. Your Groudon Kyogre are done.
You're already like, nope, they're done. Oh my goodness.
Nah,
I
they're
thought I
gonna
had
be
in
fine.
a docs. I had it in a doc somewhere the official pronunciation, and I.
But it's it's the Galapagos Islands, Terrapagos. Like it makes it is what it is, Sierra.
No, I just like I'm telling you, I saw this somewhere, and nope, that's not it. I'm so certain I got to see this somewhere. But yeah, there's some people that are like super dreading that Pokemon, and then like others are like, no, if you kind of let it sweep your team, then it's like, oh here, Katie posted it, some 3 months back in the Discord.
I remember this.
I'm gonna send you.
It's Terrapagos.
Terrapagos.
It's not Terra.
It's literally emphasis on the ah. I literally sent it to you.
Maybe Terra. Yeah, like Terra, like Terrasla. But that's not pay. That's pa. That's not pay on the
Terrapagos.
People can't see what we're talking about.
Terrapagos? You want to see Terrapagos? There's no way.
Terra. A-H. Terra.
That's why I said Terra.
No, you're not saying Terra. You're saying Terra. Terrapagos. Like Galapagos.
No.
Bro. Oh my god. Oh my god. Ask Katie this weekend, bro.
Terrapagos. Yeah.
It makes so much sense because Galapagos has all the different variants of Pokemon. Bro, Pokemon makes sense 96% of the time. It's just Ferrothorn and some other things that don't make sense.
I literally see tweets all the time from people talking about how Pokemon doesn't make sense. So I don't want to hear that. But I think that's a good time to cut that conversation off. Let us know what you're thinking about Regulation G, and we can end off with more wholesome vibes. Lou got to answer the question today earlier, but we can as well. Reminder, this was a question from Fendi G. Most memorable time commentating, like a real wild play, what banter between casters, or even a I can't believe I got to see this live moment.
Oof. Well, just to make it interesting, I will not do Toxicroak moment because I bring it up so much that it's not worth it to.
Because
obviously,
this is the seventh time these shows.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. So it's not my answer because it would just obviously be the answer. So that means I have to come up with something else. That's tough.
I think for myself, if you need a moment to think.
Yeah.
The most memorable would have to be that first NAIC that you and me casted.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, where we're literally, because there is a backstage little casting booth that we got to cast at, and then there was the booth that was out in the crowd, and we commentated Joe's first flare bit crit burn moment, and it was still like, oh my god, what is this? And then we got to cast out in the audience for the top 4 match between him and James Evans, and it was the Precipice Blades miss into the Flare Bit crit burn. And it was the second time that it happened to him that day, which was incredible.
And he missed Stomping Tantrum. Or not, what's Precipice?
The Precipice Blades
I
first.
forgot.
So, like, He should have just, if he connected, it never would have happened, but he missed, and then the flare blitz, and then it crit, and then it was just like, it was
and
so...
remember the stream cut out?
Oh my god.
So only people in the venue got to see that match?
Yeah, oh, well, it only cut out like a third of the way through. Like,
yeah, no, I
didn't
know,
cut
but
out
I'm
the
saying,
entire
like,
thing.
No,
Yeah.
I know, but like, you had to be there in person to see the full match,
like,
and
the whole
how
thing.
intense the crowd was when he missed Precious Blades,
Yeah.
then gets crit from Flare Blitz and gets burned. Like, the crowd went berserk.
It was insane. And yeah, that's the moment where you can see a Joe Brown's like Twitter banner picture where like you see me like with like the headset half off, because I was in so much shock that I stood up, and it like the way the cord was tucked, it ripped the headset off of my head while I was mid like cast, and I had to like reach back and grab it and pull it on. Production for the longest time, I actually thought I stood up and like ripped it off in anger, and I was like, no, that's not what happened. But yeah, that was insane. And I had actually warned Joe Brown too before the match, because I was feeling really emotional before that match because I was really nervous, and like Ugarte was super, super nervous, so he was a bit emotional too. So I was already like, yo, if Joe loses this, like I'm like, I don't know if I will. And I'm like, but there is the chance that I just like break down and start crying. So like, you need to be ready to like cover just in case. And I don't know if it's like enough that you can hear it, but there was a moment where like we're like talking after the game's done, like right after it wraps, and my voice starts to break a little bit, and Joe Brown just cuts me off and starts talking because I was about to start crying on desk. Even like now I get like emotional talking about it, like, oh my god. But it definitely makes the way for most emotional. And if you ever want to hear the call, they put it in their finals hype highlight reel of me making the call and Joe slow shaking his head. So yeah,
I guess my other favorite Joe Ugarte loss, because that's how we can just determine these, is Kyogre wins the raffle, Salt Lake City 2022. Misses the Origin Pulse, misses the play rough. Aaron Traylor hits the Origin Pulse, and then he gets the win, and Aaron Traylor had a 2% chance to win that. That whole set was crazy. Aaron Traylor, like, Dynamaxed his Whimsicott one game. Like, that was a phenomenal set. And so, yeah, that was the same season where he missed the play rough, 2% chance to lose, and then miss Precious Blades, crit Flare Blitz, gets burned. Like, same season, I guess. So, no matter what, most memorable is Joe losing.
Dad. No, another memorable one though for me. I didn't cast this one, but this will always hold like a special place in my heart. Was when Joe Ugarte won Portland, 2023. So I wasn't on the finals match, so I actually got to go stand out in the crowd and watch him play. And it was funny because he had gotten second at Charlotte, second at Knoxville, and then or second at Fort Wayne. I forget what order. I get the years mixed up. But he just got second at 2 events before that. I didn't attend Charlotte, but I attended the next one. And in the finals, I was backstage working, and I watched the match, and I watched him lose. And that sucked. And then the next one, like, games get traded, and I'm sitting backstage, and I'm like, I am not about to be sitting here backstage again and watch him lose. Like, I'm changing the cycle. I'm going to go out into the crowd. And because he had like lost the 2 like back to back, and he was like back in finals again, like the crowd was intense. Like, I'm standing out there in the crowd, and everyone's like losing it, like cheering him on, like at the end when he wins, right? And there's always like that moment after they win, they do their celebration, etc., where Stream has to grab them for their interview, right, in the back, which they had it in the back before, right? So then the stream runner comes to grab Joe, and Joe's like walking through the crowd, and everyone's like moving out of the way and like applauding and cheering him on. And he's like going through the crowd to his winner's interview. Coolest moment. Like, that was very much so like the game is growing. People are like cheering others on. Like, it felt like a really it felt like a sporting event.
Yeah,
it felt like
sure.
one of those moments. And like, it was special to me because of course, like Joe Ugarte winning, like obviously, but like to actually see like, that is how people like acted about it too, and that these events are getting bigger and bigger in that sense. So these moments having that much weight was like, it was a very cool like game moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I I want to say I was hosting in Portland because I feel like I interviewed him after.
I thought it was
he
Dawes.
won. Maybe was I? Oh no! I casted Portland. I hosted Orlando and then something else. I forget last year, or not Orlando. Dumb. But I hosted 3 things last year. I don't remember what they were. One of them was Joe getting second. So was that Charlotte I hosted? Right? Yeah,
Probably.
I hosted Charlotte. Yeah, because Justin Karras went. I interviewed Justin. So I remember like seeing the anguish on Joe's face. Like, God, he's so close to getting there. And then for him to break through in Portland was such a great moment.
Yeah, it was like, I was insane. And like, yeah, just like how the game is like growing in that sense that people are like cheering on, like those are so cool. I think like there's so many cool moments, but I like real quick, the other one, because this was just a great moment all around for anyone who got to experience that live, was the Avery win in juniors at NAIC 2023 with the Oranguru and like it's like with the instructor, the chat, the crowd is so into this game. Everyone was there and the crowd's chanting, "Do it again!
Do it again!"
It was so funny. And it was like Avery won, and that's like some huge iconic moments there too. The interview, like the run out onto the stage. It was amazing. Like that one, it was such a cool moment to be there, like in the crowd for that one. Like everyone was so on board with it.
And then if I had one that I was not casting, not just in the crowd for, like the biggest moment I was in the crowd for was the Machampion in 2015. That was the most electric, because he also made some insane reads, as we show in the video. Like he didn't just like win with Machamp. Like he had parental bond Cresselia from the skill swaps, like taking it away from Kangaskhan. Like just all these amazing things. Like that was the most electric like pre esports era of VGC that I'd been a part of.
I think it's really cool that we can actually sit here and talk about so many different memorable moments. Like I think that's, I don't know, a really good indication that like there's a lot of really cool things that happen, and I'm sure we can go on.
Sierra. A lot of fun times.
We do.
Someone's answer might be James Evans and Brady Smith, because that was a hell of a match.
That was. Or the Wolf Glick versus Nicholas Donnelly. Like that one was also like insane. So yeah, it's just, there's so many great things, but if we go on there forever, like we'll never get off here. I have laundry to do. I need to pack for EUIC. I got a flight. So we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of OHKO. If you're on your way traveling to London, I would hope that you're almost there already, considering this will be coming out Thursday and the competition starts on Friday. But you know what? You do you. If not, hopefully you can enjoy watching. Should be a lot of fun. Drop a Slitherwing in chat if you see me there. But thanks again so much for tuning in. Hope to see you in the Discord. Hope to see you next week on OHKO, and hope you have a great rest of your week. See ya.